Ashley over there. Yes, I got it. We're being recorded. Okay, good. We have Jen. Hi, Jen. How you doing? Beautiful picture. I see Tasharin. Beautiful picture. Thank you. And Darialis. Did I say that right? I don't know. Darialis. You can hit your space bar to short-term unmute yourself to chime back in if you want. That way. And like Ashley says, the best way to ask a question is to kind of just chime in. There you go. Just kind of chime in. And if I hear you, I'll obviously kind of, talk and stop and address your question. Okay. Also, I think Ashley has the chat open, and Ashley's working from home today due to some ice storm situation going on up north. So you could also type stuff into the chat and she'll help you with that.
I just heard about the ice storm.
Yeah.
And she's stuck in traffic on 93.
She coming here?
No.
No?
She's going to work.
She's going to work. All right. So let's begin. It is 11 o'clock. We do not punish the prompt, right? We begin right on time. Hello. How you doing? Hi. Come on in. Hi, Deb.
This is Kelly.
Hi, Kelly. How are you? Good.
Sit in.
Good. And we have another one of our agents here.
Hi.
Nice to meet you. No problem at all. No problem at all. We're in the live here. We're just kind of getting to see everybody. We had some people on Zoom too, right? So why don't we go around the room real quick and just kind of everyone reintroduce themselves, because we got a few new faces in here today.
My name's Chris.
Chris,
Zach.
Zach,
Shannon.
Shannon, Kelly,
Frank?
Amy, Frank and Amy. All right, awesome. Ron. Okay, Ron. At home playing with us today, we got Shelly, Ashley, Jen, Tasharin, and Darialis. I hope I'm saying that right. Okay, and it's like Ty Mitchell wants to enter the room as well, admit. And Marshall's coming in. All right, it's all right. We'll make you read a lot today, Marshall. You'll be reading because this is a participatory class today. So what we're going to do today is, out of respect for people's time, if you were in here yesterday, which a lot of you were, I'm not going to go over the agency form first, right? I'm going to save the forms that you guys have already seen last, and the people who are not here. Mr. Liriano is gracing our presence today. Yes. Hello, Mr. Liriano.
The book.
Hey,
This is the real guy right here.
what's up?
I want the link.
You want the link?
Jeffrey.
Ashley, would you mind sending Mr. Liriano the link to the Zoom today?
Can't find it.
He
Yes.
wants to partake virtually.
Need to learn.
All right. I'll
All right.
text it to you. Hold on.
All right, very good.
Love you guys.
Thank you. Love you. All right. So like I said, I'm going to save the forms that we did yesterday for the newcomers till the end. That way, you don't, it's the same form. You don't have to sit through it again if you don't want to. Okay. That way today will go a little faster. So what are we doing today, guys? We are doing listing forms. These are the forms that you need to use when you are getting hired to list someone's home. Sorry. Oh, sorry about that. Yeah. No packet here. Oh, and Shannon, I need to give you a packet too. And, Kelly, you said your name was? Do you want a packet too? Okay. There you go. Thank you, Shannon. I'm amazed at how well Advil is working, because I hurt my back this morning. Who has started their workout routines for 2022 already? Who's like starting to exercise? I'm gonna do it this year. So Santa brought me some heavier weights to use this year. I'm stepping up in my workout routines. And even someone who exercises regularly is susceptible to injury. And I just bent over the wrong way to pick up these weights, and it was like a zing electrical shock through my back. I hate it. And so I'm hopped up on Advil. I'm hopped up on Advil today. So we're doing good. And caffeine and Advil always work out well. All right, so let's rock and roll. New people are joining us as we speak. I'm going to pull out my packet here. The first form in your packet is the mandatory licensing consumer disclosure form. We're not going to do that first because I did that yesterday with the buyer pack. But for those who are new to the class today, we'll come back and do that near the end. Okay. So that leaves the next form, which is the most important form. This is the exclusive right to sell listing agreement. So this form is the form. It is the hiring document that allows you to represent a seller in our office as well as in the state of Massachusetts. We will do the New Hampshire form in a different class because these forms do take some time to go over. Most of our time today will probably be spent on this form, seeing as it is the most lengthy form and the most important form. And the other forms we kind of will go through fairly quickly and easily. Okay. Someone else trying to get in here. Ashley, do I need to admit everybody or are you kind of seeing that? Should I be keeping my eyes open for that?
Nope, I got you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so as we did yesterday, it's a participatory class. I'll start off with reading to begin with, and I'll be calling names out. And if you're playing at home, you might get a call from me too to read along as well for the crowd, because I think everyone might get bored of hearing me talking all day today, okay? All right, here we go. So exclusive right to sell, listing agreement. And by the way, when do you do this? You're doing this form after a listing consultation. So if someone has called you up, you showed up at their home. Hi, Zach, thanks for having me over to list your home tonight. I'm excited to help you make this move. Thanks for having me in. Come into the home and you're going through whatever process you're going through to get to know the client's needs, to uncover what the house might look like, go over your analysis of the property, XYZ. And you've come to that moment of truth where it's like, Zach, if everything sounds good to you, are you ready to put me to work tonight?
Let's do it.
Let's do it, right? And let's get some paperwork done so that we can get the process rolling, right? Now, some people think you don't do all the paperwork until they're ready to go on the market, right? That's not the case. You're getting hired tonight, okay? You're going to be their agent tonight. It may not go on the property tomorrow, on the market tomorrow, but you're going to start doing work for them. Work with staging, work with advising, watching the market, pre-marketing the property to your database. You might be doing some other types of marketing, trying to, generate interest in the property so that when you list it 2, 3, 4 weeks from now, you're going to have that built up momentum. The other reason you want to do that is, you don't really want to work. I'm very pro realtor. I'm here to support you. I want you not to be taken advantage of. I want you to, be treated like a professional. You want to get hired before you do work. That's how this industry works. You don't do work for free, then do paperwork, right? It's, put me to work and I will work for you. And this is how you get put to work, okay? So this is the paperwork. So here we go. We blank seller hereby grant to blank, a real estate broker licensed under the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, broker, the exclusive right to sell the property described as blank and recorded in the blank county registry of deeds at book blank, page blank property on the following terms and conditions. All right, so we got a lot of blanks there, right? So what are we putting in for the we? What you're going to put in is the actual owner's name here, right? The owner's name could be Ron and Deb Carpenito. They could own the home. It could be the Alpine Village Realty Trust, LLC. It could be a company is selling it, right? Who is the actual owner of the property? Your next question should be, well, Ron, how do I find out who owns the property? Right? And this is where before you go to the appointment, you're going to the registry of deeds, and thank God you're all so young because now you can do this online and find out who really owns this property, right? Because back in the day, we would have to actually go to the registry of deeds to get the real ownership's, person's name. Now, in MLS, you would go to your tools section under, I think it's property information, or I forget the name of the actual, it's called property info, I think it is. Public records, I think it might be called. And you can look up the name of the property and see who owns and see who actually owns it. Now, a little bit of tip that I give this class every single time is if the most recent deed is, typically within 5 or 10 years, it's probably the correct deed that's, recorded there with the registry, right? But if you see a deed there from like 1962, right? Then you should really go to the real registry of deeds online and start to do a little deeper dig into like the ownership. Because what happens is, like me and my wife, we bought our home. We bought it under Ron and Deb Carpenito, but life changes and I need to put everything into a trust, right? And, or, I'm going to move it into someone else's name for $1 or something like this is going to happen, right? And sometimes that doesn't get picked up by the MLS public records information system, right? So you might be writing the incorrect book and page and the incorrect owner name on your contract, right? Which you don't want to do. It makes you look kind of sloppy when you're in front of them and you say, you Chrissy, what's your husband's name?
Hadji George, John.
Yeah, Chrissy and John Hadji George, and you say, no, Ron, no, I don't know. It's owned by a trust now. The Hadji George's irrevocable trust, and like, oh, now you're marking up the form, and you're like, it looks sloppy. Do your work ahead of time, right? Get the real ownership name ahead of time. Another way to do this is I strongly advise you to form attorney relationships, right? So if you have an attorney that you send a lot of business to, or you plan to, just give them a call. Say, hey, I'm excited. I'm going to a listing appointment tonight. I was wondering if you could look up the ownership on this. I'm a little confused. It seems like they might have owned it for quite some time. You know, and they would be happy to do it, right? Because what do they want to do? They want to form relationships with you because they want you to refer them to this seller for seller side representation. So you can do that. So we, whatever the proper ownership name is there, seller, hereby grant to Keller Williams Realty Success, a real estate broker licensed under the laws of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, broker, okay? Remember, like we said yesterday, all contracts are between who? And the client, right? Not you. You are not a broker. You are a salesperson affiliated with the brokerage firm, right? So it's Keller Williams Realty Success. That's who this contract is for, okay? Question, comment? Thought I heard something. No? Okay, very good. Now, the exclusive right to sell the property described as, and this is where you're putting in the address of the property, right? 125 Main Street, Andover, Massachusetts, 01852, and recorded in the blank county registry of deeds. Again, you're pre-doing this, right? Because you're going to look like a knucklehead if you go to this thing and say, oh, what county are we in? Because, you know, you sell homes all over the place. You're not going to ask the client, what county are you in, Frank? I don't do a lot in Medfield. What is this county? No, you're going to have it already written in there before you go to the appointment, right? County Registry of Deeds at book and page, and you'll know the proper book and page because if you have the proper ownership, the deed, it'll say at book and page. That's how the registry records these documents with a book and page number. Okay, on the following terms and conditions. Okay, 1, seller's duties and representations. And again, for the newbies in this class, yesterday I'd said you certainly can read this line by line in front of a client, right? But that is going to cause more questions to come up. It's going to go longer and you might get a bit tongue-tied. Your best advice is to internalize learn what you're actually doing here and come up with a shorter hand version of what this paragraph entails. And if you're in front of a seller who is a analytical kind of SC personality type, they're the kind of people that may want to go through line by line. You'll know that you'll take your cue a bit from the client, right? If you're in front of a D direct person, they're like, bottom line it for me. Just what is this paragraph? Next, and they want to move forward, right? You don't have to go line by line. Interpersonals like myself, we don't mind talking and sharing stories and things like that, right? But just kind of, you know, gauge your presentation upon who you're in front of, right? Now in this classroom, I have all different personality types, right? So, you know, some might be perturbed that I'm taking too long already and I'm only on this paragraph because I got an appointment that I got to get to. And others are like, Frank likes every little piece of detail, right? Am I right? I mean, you do like every little piece of detail. So you love the classes going on long and more stories being told and things like that. So, you know, in a classroom, you just got to do the best you can. All right, seller's duties and representations. The broker, that's Keller Williams Realty Success, is granted the exclusive right to sell the property as the seller's agent during the term of the agreement, and the seller agrees to refer all inquiries to the broker to cooperate in marketing the property, including completing lead paint, if property built before 78, and other forms. Pretty powerful sentence, right? What does it mean? It means that once you sign this form, Zach, I am your broker, right? So, Zach, I don't recommend you blast on Facebook, just listed my home tonight, you know, because you're going to start getting hit up with tons of DMs asking for more information because it's a hot market, right? And Zach, we're not ready to go to the market yet. We're not ready to show the home yet, right? It wouldn't be in your best interest based upon what we've agreed to do tonight, right? So let's just keep it on the DL for now. But understand, if someone does know that you're selling and they have interest, you'll refer those people to me so that I can start negotiating on your behalf and just getting them the initial information. I can start vetting them out for us and doing my job that you're hiring me to do tonight. Okay? Thank you, Zach. Right? So that's the kind of language around that sentence, right? All right. If the property is sold to a buyer procured by the broker, by the seller, or by anyone else, the fee described in paragraph 4 will be due. So Zach, we are working together in this process. I'm certainly going to be implementing my marketing campaign and, reaching out to all the realtors and everything I've described to you in, our discussion tonight and in my pre-list package that I sent you. But of course, you're going to know some people in your work and your social circles and things like that. So, we are working together. So you'll refer them to me as we agreed to, and I'll be negotiating on your best interest to get the job done, right? It's not just about finding the buyer, it's getting to the closing table and making sure it's a complete process, right? Not to mention all the work I'll be doing up front to get this home on the market. All right, so we're working together. That's why it doesn't matter who procured the buyer. We're going to be able to fee because we're doing our work. Okay. All right. The broker is authorized but not required, A, to offer compensation to other licensed brokers as a buyer's agent or facilitator, but of course we are going to. B, and why is that in there? Because guess what? If you do sell this home without the use of a buyer agent, things like that, you want to let them know that, I wasn't required to pay anybody else. We took care of it ourselves, but we are authorized to do so if another agent is around in part of the transaction, right? B, to place a listing for the property in any multiple listing services, right? We're authorized but not required to. Why? Because you could sell it off MLS, right? You could sell it privately. I have a database of thousands of buyers, right? I could send something out and from that buyer pool, create a buyer. It never hit the MLS. I'm authorized, but I'm not required to, right? C, to place a sign on the property. I mean, it's part of my marketing package to always put a sign on the property if allowed by town regulations, allowed by the seller, allowed by the condo association. People can refuse that. There are private people that don't want everyone knowing that there's an act. They don't want to know that, that their home's on the market, or they live in maybe an area where a vacant home could get broken into and they don't want people knowing it's on the market so easily, things like that. So yeah, there's cases where they don't want to sign. Condo complexes typically 80-90% of the time don't allow signs up, so there's not going to be a sign, Okay. This time, to advertise the property in such media as the broker may select. You are in charge. The broker is in charge of where the marketing will be, right? And E, to place a lockbox on the property, authorized but not required, right? We can put a lockbox on the property. The seller authorizes the broker to disclose to prospective buyers all information about the property provided to the broker by the seller. Mr. Seller, everything you tell me, I'm authorized to share with the buyer. We have a duty to be fair and honest with the other agent, in general, and disclosure of material defects of this property, I need to disclose, okay? Side note, in Massachusetts, are you all aware that a seller is not required to disclose property defects except for lead paint? Lead paint is a required disclosure by law. Massachusetts does not require a seller to disclose any property defects beyond lead paint, okay? New Hampshire is different, okay? So when we do the New Hampshire class, the seller has an affirmative duty to disclose property conditions, all right? That's different. Every state's a little different, guys, okay? The seller authorizes the broker. Yeah, we read that already. The seller acknowledges receipt of the mandatory licensing consumer relationship disclosure form. That's this form, guys. Everyone at home, we're going to be reviewing that last for those who didn't go over it already. According to the Code of Ethics and Standards of Practice of the National Association of Realtors, the seller has been advised of 1, the broker's general company policies regarding cooperation with and compensation to subagents, buyer's agents, and facilitators. Now, I guarantee you, when you read that line, if you read that line directly to the seller in front of you, you probably haven't had a conversation already advising them of our office policies on compensating subagents, buyer agents, and facilitators, right? So you might pause right there and say, just to let you know, Mr. Seller, our policy is that we compensate buyers, agents, and facilitators to come show your property, but we don't compensate seller subagents because that's a form of agency that's kind of gone to the past. It's not really done much anymore because it brings some liability to you as a seller, where we're liable for what other agents who we may not even know are saying about your property. So we don't compensate those kind of agents, but our whole industry has moved away from that, and the forms just haven't kept up with, that process. But it's still technically a legal form of representation. It's just not done anymore, okay? That completely really ended back in 2005, right? But around 2005 to 2007, seller subagency ended, right? And literally it was, Zach, you're working with a buyer, but you weren't a buyer agent, you were a seller's agent, working with a buyer. You never knew my seller, right? But you showed the home and you were acting as the seller's agent, right? So everything you say, Zach, who we don't even know, the seller is vicariously liable for. All right, so that's called seller subagency. So it's not really a great form of agency to begin with. However, before buyer's agency happened back in the mid-90s, that's how all agents worked. So before buyer's agency, which wasn't always a thing, you could only be a seller's agent. So you'd be working with a buyer for months and you'd earn their trust and they would tell you everything. And I can spend 500 grand, but I don't want to. And the agent's job was actually to get that person to spend the most money, the best terms for the seller, because that's what the law said and that's what the job was. Okay. But then in about 1996, the Mass Board of Realtors, real estate licensee, yada, yada, said, hey, that's not right. Buyers should have a representative working and looking out for them. And that's when buyer's agency was formed. Okay. But you can still work as a seller sub-agent. 2, the fact that a buyer's agent, even if compensated by the listing broker or seller, will represent the interest of the buyer. It's important to note that because, again, you know, I don't think we see it as much, but I've been doing this 17 years. And when I first started and I would read that line to somebody, the sellers who were at that point, you know, probably in their 70s, you know, they probably passed on at this point. They would be like, what do you mean they don't work for me? If I'm paying them commission, they represent me. That's older people would think that because they didn't grasp, they didn't understand like buyer's agents, because they came up at a time when all the agents worked for the sellers, right? And they feel like if I'm paying a commission, that agent better be working on my behalf. They didn't get the whole like thing, all right? So that's why you're disclosing that to them. Nowadays, you won't have a problem with that. 3, any potential for the listing broker to act as a disclosed dual agent on behalf of the seller and the buyer. Mr. Seller will go over that on the backside of this contract when we talk about designated agency and dual agency, okay? Okay. The seller agrees to comply with any applicable fair housing laws, okay? Mr. Seller, we're gonna sell this home to anyone, white, black, red, brown, Chinese, Asian, Indian, doesn't matter. As long as their cash is green and they bring us an acceptable offer, we're selling, right? We don't violate fair housing laws. I don't see that problem much anymore at all. I think everyone gets to, I mean, look, I don't know. At least in my circle, at least in my experience, I can't recall, getting old, I can't recall much of anyone saying, I'm not selling to a girl. I'm not selling to a gay person. So I've not had that happen, right? So, and I'm glad, that's good. But I'm sure it does happen. That's why we have those rules and things. Seller is aware that there is a risk to injury of persons viewing the property, as well as a risk of loss or damage to the property of the seller during a showing or open houses, whether the showing was accompanied by the broker, by a lockbox, which means by another agent, or otherwise. The seller has responsibility to prepare the property for marketing to minimize the likelihood of injury, damage, and loss. Mr. Seller, it's like we're open for business, right? People are gonna be coming through your home. I'll help you, you know, do the best I can to give you some advice on preparing the home, you know, to avoid trip hazards, or, you know, I'll remind you, you know, to put your prescriptions away, your money, your guns, your jewels, things like that. You know, we do have some issues from time to time. That I can say for a fact, that you will have issues at open houses if you're doing them. Not so much at private showings, because those are pretty much recorded and we know who's going in and we know the agents going in and things like that. But I have literally had open houses where stuff has gotten stolen, right? You know, everyone seems to have forgotten the heroin epidemic due to COVID, right? So no one thinks about the heroin epidemic that we live with up here in the Merrimack Valley, with some of the towns nearby being, you know, huge providers of those products. And when you host open houses, sometimes you'll get like, you're with a client and some people are coming in and they're not signing in and they're just going through the house and you don't know who they are. And it's like, hey, what's going on here, right? I can remember specifically in Reading one time, I had 4 people come in at one time and they all went in different directions. And at that open house, my client's, one of her pocketbooks were stolen, right? And so like, you know, they didn't sign in, I was with another client, like things happen. So Mr. Seller, you need to I'm just letting you know, things can happen in an open house. You know, hide stuff. We're moving, right? So hide stuff, box it up, put it in the attic. If it's valuable, get it out of the house. You know, keep your insurance on the home clearly. You know, because trips. You know, even we're in New England, right? So you know, Marshall, we're in New England. You have a duty to maintain your walkway, your staircases. People can slip and fall. You don't want them, you know, coming after your homeowner's policy for that. You know, your home is open for business, so we need to make it as safe as reasonably possible. Right? Okay. Seller agrees to indemnify, defend, and hold the broker and its agents harmless from any loss or claim of liability during any showing or an open house, other than if it's been proven as a result of intentional misconduct. So if I push someone down the stairs, that's, that's intentional misconduct, right? But if there's a showing and let's say Frank took a buyer through and they had two little ones and they really had to use the bathroom, and one little kid uses the bathroom and he flushes the toilet and he broke the chain thing, right? This stuff happens. It's an accident. The kid probably shouldn't be using the bathroom, but you didn't want to say no to a little kid. It's unintentional. It's an accident. Seller's responsible for that, right? And they're not going to hold us liable for those kind of things. Now, that's what this agreement says. You might make a business decision to bring in a plumber to save the day. Don't worry about that, Mr. Seller. I'll handle it. You can do that stuff. But, this is going to protect our brokerage firm in the event of much larger scale issues. House gets broken in somehow during the showing, and they want to attribute it to the brokerage firm somehow, right? This is going to help to hopefully cover our brokerage firm in a way that we may not be liable, right? Things like that. But little things do happen. Seller understands and agrees that showings may be conducted by licensees other than the broker or its agents, and that inspectors or appraisers may conduct inspections and appraisals outside the presence of the broker. Totally normal. Mr. Seller, we want to make sure the home's accessible at any time for buyer agents to show the property, right? We don't want to limit the showing ability of this home by schedules having to be coordinated. You're hiring our team because of the way we present homes and market homes and make them accessible and things like that. And so that's why there are going to be showings by buyer agents, sometimes without our presence here, right? Things like that. So that happens. Seller further understands and agrees that other licensees and prospective buyers are permitted to photograph and videotape the property unless expressly stated to the contrary. Hey, Mr. Seller, unfortunately, we can't control people taking out their, droids and their iPhones and taking extra pictures and things like that. So if you have anything you really don't want photographed, you should be taking it down. You should be packing it up, things like that, right? Seller hereby acknowledges that the property to be listed does or does not have recording devices. Now, this is a new one. This is new for maybe the past 4 years. They added this in due to all of the surveillance that's going on now. It is illegal in Massachusetts to be surveilled and recorded without permission from the person that you're surveilling, okay? So that's why this is on here. And there's been cases where buyers would go through the home. I love the home. I love the home. Sellers are watching it on the video. The offer comes in. The seller is in a better negotiating position now because they know how the buyers feel. The worst example of this is the home inspection, right? You're at the home inspection. The seller's watching the home inspection. People forget the camera's on. Home inspectors explaining what's wrong. Buyers like, we don't care, we want the house, we love the house. But then, after the fact, they go back to try to get some money off or get a thing made. The seller's like, nah, we're not doing it. We know you love the home. So it got to be a little bit hairy. So now we're upfront saying, hey, we need to disclose to buyers if this home is being surveilled so they know. And you'll see in the MLS, when you put listings in, there'll be a checkbox like, is there surveillance on the property or not? You need to indicate yes or no. Hello? Anybody? Nope. Okay. So it does or does not have recording devices, including but not limited to devices such as Nest, Arlo, Amazon, blah, 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 blah. If a device is present, the seller hereby states that it records what? Audio, video, or both. Seller acknowledges that it is a crime in Massachusetts to secretly hear or record another individual without their knowledge and consent. Yes, he says it right there. Now, the listing price. The listing price of the property shall be blank dollars or such other price and terms as the seller may approve. You can put in here, a solid price. You can put in here a range. You can put in here to be determined prior to going live marketing. You can put a placeholder in here. All right. What do? I typically put something in here that we've kind of settled on as a reasonable price for the property, $350,000. But Marshall, it's going to take you about a month to get this home into shape. So we're going to put $350 in here for now. But once we see what the final product looks like, we'll do another refresher CMA. And then we may tweak the number a little bit, but this is pretty much where we kind of need to be. All right. Get something in there. Okay. Listing period. The agreement shall begin on blank and end on blank and may extended by agreement. Listing period begins tonight, right? So today's date in here, right? I'm your agent effective today. okay? And ends on, and customarily we do 6 months, right? In slower market times, you're gonna be putting a full year in here, okay? Could you put 3 months in here? You could. We recommend 6 months. We want you to have the maximum flexibility you need. Why? Well, many reasons why, but I've literally gotten listings signed that don't go on the market for 4 months. So it's because they got a ton of work to do. And I'm doing my pre-marketing, I'm getting the word out on my newsletter, I'm meeting the contractor over there, I'm helping them through this process, right? Other things, I need 6 months. It might go on the market. And then believe me, if they take 4 months, I'm getting an extension signed before I even go on the market to extend it out at least 6 months from that point, right? Because that's the right thing to do, okay? Some agents will put a year in here. I wouldn't put anything less than 6 months. I mean, what's the point? Why would you put 30 days in? If it's not going on the market in a day or a week, you know, put 6 months in it. Just put 6 months, you'll be fine, okay? Broker's fees. If within the term of the agreement or any extension, the property is sold or the broker procures a buyer who is ready, willing, and able to buy at a price on the terms set forth herein or on such other price and terms as the seller may agree, the broker shall be due a fee of blank % of the net or gross selling price. Let's stop there. Now, traditional fee is 6%, okay? So you can put in a 6% here, right? And on the other side, you will be talking about how much of that fee you're going to be giving to a buyer agent, right? You can put in here a different number. You can't put, we don't put discount. We're not a discount brokerage firm, so we're not putting in discounts here. What do? I can only speak to what I do. I put in the way I get hired is I'll put a range in here of 5, 5.5, or 6. Okay. And then I will explain, you get to choose, Mr. Seller. And they'll say, okay, what's involved here? Well, our fee for listing side services is typically 3%, right? And of course, there's a fee for a buyer agent if one exists that we want to offer compensation to, okay? And in this area, you know, that might range between 2 and 3%. If you do 2%, you know, you'll be pretty basic, baseline kind of a commission. 2.5 might be a little bit more of a premium, and 3% would be a full premium. What do you think we should do? That's what they're going to say. And you'll just give them your advice. Say, if you offer 3% on the buy side, or if a buyer agent is present, then your fee will be 6%, and that would be, in this market climate, perceived to be a premium. You know, it'll be pushed a lot more. Well, I thought brokers aren't supposed to be focused on the commission rate when they push a house. Well, that's true. That's true. The fee is not supposed to get in the way of someone showing the property, but we all know human nature, right? And if two homes are somewhat similar, and a lot of agents don't work with a commission arrangement with their buyers, so they're going to be focused on the one that might pay them the most, right? Sadly, but you might have a benefit by offering a higher fee. Well, why do I have to offer any fee, Ron? It's a hot market. Do we have to offer any fee? Well, you know, our policy is that we always have to offer a compensation to a buyer agent. And frankly, if there is no offer of compensation, we're going to see a drastic reduction in the amount of interest of your property, right? In fact, I personally have never seen, you know, zero offered. It has to be at least $1 in our MLS system, which I have seen. Wink. We don't want to do that. And that if you were in our buyer class yesterday, you know why you need to be hired for a fee from your client, because you don't want to show a property that has a $1 co-broke and then you don't know what to do. Okay, so if you want to keep it easy peasy, you know, I would just go. Listen, we're in Andover. It's typically 2.5, 3%. Let's go with 2.5. Great. Total fee is 5.5. Right. Oh, we're in Haverhill. You know, I kind of go through the MLS and we see that it's 2%. You know, if you want to be on par with that, you know, your total fee would be 5%. Right. Things like that. Right. So that's how I do it. Right now. I know there are some people out there that might say, you shouldn't do that. You can't tell them what the average fee is in Haverhill and blah, 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 blah. Okay, maybe you're right. I don't know where I've seen that written that I can't do that or it's illegal to do that. I just know that it's reality. I look at the co-brokes, I see what's being offered out there, and that's what's being offered to the buyer agents. I'm giving them the honest advice of what I see, right? They can offer what they want. You can offer. By the way, the way I'm posing this to you is I'm giving them the authority to decide, right? And I'm giving them a level, right? Wait, Some agents don't do it that way. A lot of agents will say the fee is 5%, the fee is 6%, of which we're going to give 3%. They'll just directly say what we're going to do, right? Other agents will say we're doing it at 5% and we do 2.5 to the buyer agent and we'll keep 2.5, things like that. Me, I'm giving them a range. I'm letting them have input as to, hey, where my listing side is going to be a minimum of 3, if not the full amount, if I bring the buyer directly. But I'm offering you the chance to decide, do you want to offer more? It's your house. You might want to offer more and incentivize the buyer agent population out there to push your home harder. It's your choice, Mr. Buyer. So that's how I do it. Okay. You had a question, Frank.
Why does the seller get involved in what you're gonna pay the buyer agent? I mean,
Why does he get involved? She get involved?
yeah,
Well, I'm actually making them involved by the way I pitch it, right? You don't have to. You could say our policy, the Frank Ford team charges 6% to sell a home, of which we give 2% to a buyer agent if one exists. For the level of service we provide, it's a 6% commission. Sign. And now they're not involved, right? You're just telling them
Right.
what it's going to be. You can do it that way. And I did it that way for the longest time. I did do it
why
that's how I
you
did it.
change?
I just felt it was a better way. I liked the idea of bringing the seller in to the conversation.
So
Right.
depending on how much they want to pay the buyer agent will determine what your commission is.
No, my fee is always 3% minimum for listing the home, right?
Okay.
Remember, it's a total fee of which I'm taking 3% for Keller Williams Realty, right, minimum. And we're adding on the buyer agent co-broke fee. How much would you like to offer, Frank? 2, 2.5, or 3,
Okay.
right? I'm giving them that kind of input. on
So
it.
you're letting them determine, you're giving them an opportunity to reduce their commission to you
In
by
total.
saying, I want 3%. And how much do you want to give the buyer agent
If there is one.
if there is?
Right.
And if there isn't one, you just keep the whole 3%.
The total fee comes to Keller Williams Realty. If there's another agent involved, it goes out to them.
So if there's no agent, you will still get.
No, if there's no
5.5%.
agent, I have procured the buyer. So now that buyer side fee comes
Okay.
to me as well.
Okay.
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 Remember, the total fee comes to Keller Williams Realty Inc. What do I want to say about this? I mean, technically, the whole fee, you're hiring Keller Williams, the brokerage firm. They're charging a fee. We're going to give a part of that fee to another side, right? I'm kind of hybriding it and giving the seller some input on what that's going to be. I certainly could go out and say, we're charging 5%, of which 2 is going to another agent. And I'm telling them that's our policy, our team policy is we do it this way, right? I could do that. I don't know, people like to have some input in the commission, I think. And I think this is a nice way to kind of ensure that my side at least is going to be a full fee, right? And B, they feel like they've had some insight into what the next other side's going to be. And I tell you, it goes all over the board. I could show you all my listing contracts. I have some at 6 and some at 5 and some at 5.5 and things like that. And it's fine because they have input on it, right? There you go.
When it comes to closing, do we
Yeah.
see a fee going to the buyer agent?
Describe the seller.
Yeah, the seller.
So the answer is yes. Well, yes, they do. Yes, because there's going to be a CD form, which the combined CD form, the seller and buyer have access to. So see both sides of the, well, now you've got me in a mental hiccup right now. Technically, I don't think that they're supposed to see it, but there is a combined alter form that I'm pretty sure they're all going to see it. Why am I not remembering this right?
I think it is on there.
It's a combined alter form, right? But I know that there was something that we're not supposed to see the buyer side transaction because we're not privy to that. That law has changed. The CFPB, which is the Consumer Finance Protection Board, has changed that rule as of like 2017, where we can see the other side of the CD. But some attorneys don't let us see the other side of the CD. So we'll only get a signed seller side ALTA. What does ALTA stand for? Anyone? You were in that class. American Land Title Association, correct. The ALTA form used to be called the HUD form. Back in the day, there was a really long HUD form, buyer side, seller side. In 2015-ish, it changed to a CD, right, form. And it was a buy side and a sell side. And then there is a combined ALTA form. Sometimes I get the combined ALTA form. Sometimes I only get the seller side if I'm working the seller side, and sometimes I only get the buyer side if I'm working the buyer side. But yeah, I mean, on the combined form, it is on there. Is it correct? Not always. I just did the deal in Linfield, I've been using as examples here. It was a 5.5% commission, right? 3 to our side, 2.5 to the other side, right? And the altar form had a 50-50 split on the commission form. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter the broker commission split on the altar form. As long as the total commission is correct on the altar form, that's all that matters.
I just pulled mine up, it's both.
It's both. You have a combined altar, right?
Combined, yeah.
But the more deals you do, the more you'll see sometimes you're getting just the seller side one or whatever side you're working.
Got it.
Because some attorneys don't like giving the combined form out
Got it, yeah.
because they don't understand that the law has changed, that we are allowed to see that, right? But they just feel it's not in our business. That's buyer side stuff. You don't need to see that.
Yeah,
And technically you
I
don't.
get
really,
it,
you know? So does that answer your question well enough? Okay, good. Okey doke. So talk about listing, we're talking about broker fee, right? Now, what is this net gross? What is this net gross of the net price or the gross price, right? Always just circle gross here, okay? I always circle gross. That's how I was raised. The fees due in the gross, okay? What does it mean if you circle net? What does it mean if it circles net? So back in 2007, when the market crapped out, okay? Agents started to have trouble listing homes, and they were being there are agents that can toe the line, and there are agents that don't toe the line. Okay, and some agents will come in contact with sellers who will say, "I'm not paying commission on closing cost credits. If we got to give the seller $5,000 back for closing cost credits, I'm not paying commission on that." Okay, so okay, at a 5% commission, you're talking how much money, Frank? $250, right? $250.
Right.
So most agents say, "All right, no problem. I don't have to pay." All right. It's a net listing, right? Whatever the closing cost credits are, there's no commission owed. That's a net listing. Now, let's discuss that briefly. If you're looking through MLS and you see commission to buyer agent 2% net, right? That means if you write an offer with a closing cost credit, you're not going to receive 2% on the sale price. You're going to receive 2% on the net price, right? Why is that good or bad?
Oh, that would be less.
So that's less to you, right? Does that, now again, top agents don't get shit because it's not a lot of money, but you know, is that gonna cause an agent to maybe write a different offer because they're gonna make less money if there's a closing cost credit in there? Possibly. Might change the way that them and their client, you know, talk about it. Could. Why did this happen? Again, sellers were saying, why should I have to pay? They want money back to finance fees. Why should I have to pay on that? You know, things like that. I could somewhat get on board with that logic if the sale price was increased above the list price and they're just trying to purely finance their fees. Okay. But if I'm agreeing to, you know, the list price with a closing cost credit to make the deal go through, you know, I'm willing to accept 195, say, right? But the sale price is 200, right? I think that the seller should pay commission on the sale price, right? Here's a good example of why this is important. Frank, you're selling your home. It's on for $250,000. There's a home inspection, right? And it needs a new roof, or some repair to the roof that costs $3,500, right? Buyer says, "I'll buy the home, but you got to fix the roof." You say, "Fine." You fix the roof and spend $3,500. The sale price is $200,000, but you spent $3,500 on fixing the roof. How is that different than you spending $3,500 to pay for the buyer's fees? There's no difference. You're still net less $3,500. You wouldn't have fixed that roof or done that repair if this deal wasn't going to go through. Yet you pay commission on that full sale price, even though you had to, right? So you see how it's a slippery slope, right? If the seller says, "I'm not going to pay commission on a closing cost credit for fees," why do they have to pay commission on a repair credit for $10,000 of some sorts to do something like that, right? So I say, just leave it alone. It's on the gross price. Whatever deal we negotiate, it's on the sale price, and that's what the fee is, right? But that's the difference, net and gross, right?
But if you go gross, then those listings you saw in MLS, it said, you know, 2%, 2.5% net. That assumes that they circled net. You can't do gross here and net on
That's
what you
right.
pay the buyer agent. So it's got to be consistent.
Right. If you circle gross here, when you put the MLS listing in, it's going to say gross sales price.
Okay.
And that's of course, if the agents put it in the MLS right. And if it was, because you're never gonna see this listing contract. You're never gonna see this listing contract on a listing agent. So you're never gonna know if gross or net is circled. You're only going by what's in the MLS, right? So any questions on that out there in the netherworld? You get it, net and gross price. And again, our particular office here, I've never been advised of a policy around it, of a requirement that you must do gross or you must do net. But I was brought up in a time that it was always gross. I get paid on the sale price. I mean, it's the way it works, You decided to give the money back to make the deal go through, Mr. Buyer, not seller, Mr. Seller. That wasn't my decision. It was your decision. I've sold it at this price. That's where my commission is based off of, right? Okay. Said fee shall be paid at the time set for closing and may be deducted. Oh, wait, let me back up. This is an important line there. The broker shall be due a fee of blank % of the net gross selling price, whether or not the transaction closes or title passes. Whether or not closing happens or the title passes. Wow, you mean I owe you the fee if we don't close? Yeah, you do. Why? Huh? Brought you a buyer, has a contractual ownership of this property, right? Has a claim to your property by legal paperwork, right? If you now, 3 days before closing, decide not to sell, oh, Ron, I can't leave this neighborhood. I grew up here. My husband doesn't want to move. Or the kids are all, we don't want to move. Whose fault is that? It's not my fault. I brought the buyer. We've gone through this path. You owe me the fee. Now, are you going to collect the fee? It's not up to you, because yesterday we reminded everyone, these contracts are with the brokerage firm and the broker. So you would have a conversation with that broker of record. Right now it's Susan Roquart. Susan, they don't want to sell. They're backing out. They're backing out of the deal. I worked 6 months on this. I've done that. I've done this. I put my own money into it, blah, blah, blah. I want to enforce our contract and go after our fee. It's going to be up to her to decide, okay? Because the contracts are between the brokerage and her, okay? And the seller, okay? Again, this paperwork is helping to give you some leg to stand on if we're going to stand on a leg, all right? It doesn't mean you have to enforce it or you're going to enforce it, okay? Yeah, I mean, because clearly without something like that, there's no teeth. The seller could walk away, right? And they would be only risking being sued by the buyer for what's called, anybody? Thank you, Marshall. Specific performance, right? A buyer can sue a seller for specific performance on a contract to perform, okay? So they would have to fear that the buyer will be suing them, but also might fear that the brokerage firm is going to be suing them for their fee, okay? So we just let you pay it at closing, Mr. Seller, because guess what? Most sellers don't have the $50,000 in fees to pay you because it's inside their equity of their home, right? So that's why the fees are paid at closing, but they're owed once an offer is accepted. Now, Frank's next question is going to be is, what's your next question, Frank? You ask it every class. What if the buyer walks away? Is the fee still owed? Because title didn't pass, right?
Right.
But it says it's owed if title didn't pass, right? And if the transaction didn't close. So what if the buyer walks away? Is the fee owed? Technically, it kind of sounds like it's owed, right?
I would say no,
Okay.
because you didn't bring the buyer walked away. So, I mean, this happens all the time
Mm-hmm.
where the, deal falls apart, buyer walks away, it could be a bunch of things.
Mm-hmm.
And you just put the house back on
And you resell it.
and you.
Right. A lot of times they get out of it for covered contingency,
Right.
which is understandable. But sometimes they
But
walk
it's not
away.
the fault of the seller.
It's not the fault of the seller
It's the
sometimes.
buyer walked away.
What if the seller refused to do repairs or something and the buyer said, well, I'm not buying the home, I'm walking away? Now is it the seller's fault? Complicated, right? It gets a little complicated, right?
Just fall apart there?
Well, when deals fall apart, again, what if the way this is written is if the deal doesn't close or title does not pass, the fee is still owed, right? And it was intended to prevent a seller from saying, I've decided not to sell, you know, I don't care, you've worked 6 months with me, blah, blah, blah.
And then go to the buyer afterwards.
Or go to the buyer directly afterwards to try to sell it to them, right? Things
But
like
that's
that.
later on.
Correct. But that's what this language is in here for, to try to protect. Now, 100% of the time, if a buyer walks away, you're not gonna enforce this contract against your seller. Because if they literally had no part of the deal falling apart, that would be bad. You would not do that. And I don't think you'd win that case in a court, but again, the way it's written, it's a little bit vague, you know, a little bit vague. Said fee will be paid at the time set for closing and may be deducted from amounts held by the broker as escrow agent. The aforesaid fee shall also be due upon the sale of the property to any person who is introduced to the property during the aforesaid term or any extension, or who entered into an agreement to purchase during the term, during any extension, or within blank days after expiration of the term or any extension, regardless of the date the title passes, except if the seller has entered into an exclusive arrangement with another broker in good faith, period. So you have a 6-month agreement to sell a home. And, you know, in today's world, it is sold in 6 days, so there's no problem. But I'm old enough to remember when the home didn't sell in 6 months, okay? And I'm like, I don't want to lose this listing. I want to keep it going. I need a price improvement, blah, blah, blah. But for some reason or not, you may not get rehired. You may not get an extension, right? But what if someone comes back to buy the home that you had been procuring during the term of your agreement here? They came to your open houses 3 times, you showed it twice to them, but the contract expires, and now the seller doesn't want to rehire you, right? But there's a buyer agent out there with the buyer that you've been procuring, and they go directly to the seller to try to buy the home. Are you owed a fee? Are you owed a fee? You're owed a fee, right? According to
Yes.
this, right? According to this. Now, what do you put in for a date, a time frame in there? Now, I was always taught, again, this is customary. There's no office, you know, requirement on this. I put 60 days in because I feel like if I can't get, if it's not going to happen after 60 days, I don't even want the fee. I'm not owed it. I don't give a shit. I didn't do my job. Okay. I don't want, first of all, you shouldn't want any money that you didn't properly earn. Okay. If you don't earn the fee, don't even try to get the fee. If you've earned the fee and you've done your job, then you should go after your fee, right? But some agents will put 180 days in here. Some agents put a full year in here. Why was this put in here, Frank? Do you know why?
Because if the deal falls apart or the contract expires.
Right.
And then the day after the contract expires, the person, a buyer.
Comes back.
Come back, you saw the property in open house or something, comes back and makes an offer.
Directly to
Minus
seller.
your fee.
Right. Frank's exactly right. That's why this was put in here. So back in the day, you would, this has happened to me. Again, you do this long enough, you'll see all this stuff. And I think I told you the story. It happened specifically in 2005, right? And this is why we keep open house registers. One reason why. You want an open house register for everyone that comes through so you can know who came through and you procured as a potential buyer, okay? And, you know, they will leave, some buyers will leave notes to the seller. They'll write a little note and put it under the pillow. I can't afford $700,000 for this home. I love it. I'd love to live here. If it doesn't sell, call me directly. Maybe we can work out a deal. i.e. with no real estate commission involved. I can get it cheaper, things like that. That will happen to you. It didn't happen to me, okay?
That's insane.
It's insane, but it does happen. So that's why this was put in here. So to the day, it was like the 61st day, the house closed on the 61st day after my contract had expired. And it was definitely to someone that was at my open house because I could see who bought it. And I go, I'm like, oh, and I'm like, I was mad. I was mad. It was 2005-ish. It was a tough house to sell. I couldn't sell it. It was like up on a 30-degree angle hill. And it was a tough sale. I was brand like 1 year in the business, new, and I was taken advantage of. And that's why that's in there. And it happened to me. So don't think it doesn't happen. It does happen. Things like that could be happening more often now these days, actually, if you think about it. Buyers are looking for any edge to get the property. You know, I actually don't put it past a buyer to write a note to a seller at an open house and slip it under a pillow, hopes that they see, you know, we're going to write an offer on your home. Please, you know, I know this might not be appropriate, but I really wanted to, you know, express how much we love it and make sure you got my message. And that stuff can happen. I've never done it. I bet it does. Bet it does. Okay. Now, this is where it gets confusing. And we're going to review it and try to explain it to you. Here we go. So we ended that last sentence where it said, except if the seller has entered into an exclusive arrangement with another broker in good faith. If any deposit is retained by the seller as liquidated damages for default by the buyer under any agreement for sale of the property, the broker will be due 1/2 of the amount so retained, but not more than any amount equal to the full commission that would have been paid to the broker if a sale had been completed. Interesting. Did you know that you're entitled to 50% of the deposit if the deal dies and there's money that was retained by the seller? Did you know that? Because who else has been damaged by except for the seller? You've been damaged, right? You've done all this work. You brought the deal to thing, the thing fell apart. The seller's retaining money. You're going to retain some money. Okay. Now, do we actually get that money and go after it and say, oh, we're going to keep half the deposit? I've never done it. I've never seen anyone do it, right? Does it have the right to do it? Sure. What's that put in there for? It's put in there for a few reasons. One, I think we as brokers we do not in this brokerage firm want to get involved in a deposit dispute. Okay. Our goal is to help our clients sell their home. Okay. So we want them to follow what the contract said. If the money's supposed to go back to the buyer, we want to help facilitate that happening as quickly as possible to get this home back on the market, right? If the home's supposed to go to the seller, we want to say, hey, the home should go to the seller. We want to try to help facilitate that as fast as possible. If we can't and the parties don't agree, because remember, the parties have to agree, buyer and seller have to agree what's happening with the deposit and do it in writing so that our brokerage firm can release the escrow money. If they can't agree, then it's going to have to go to a court. It's going to have to go to a judgment. And so sometimes, if there's $50,000 in deposit, right? You can remind the seller, yeah, you should go after that because I want my half. And they're going to say, what do you mean your half? Well, remember, I'm damaged too. Our brokers own half of that. Now it's only $25,000 in their head. And now maybe it's not so important to fight for, right? And now maybe they're just going to release it and move forward, right? Certainly with smaller deposits, you definitely want to try to advise clients to just release deposits and move forward if realistic. I'm talking like $1,000 home inspection deposit, right? Don't get in a piss and match over $1,000. You're not an attorney. You're not B, I tell my clients all the time, we're a brokerage firm. We help you buy and sell real estate. We do not fight deposit disputes. You'll need an attorney for that. Our brokerage firm doesn't handle that. Yes, I agree with you, Mr. Seller. The offer form says you should get the deposit. I agree. You need to get an attorney to enforce that. We're not attorneys. I can't magically make the seller side read this and agree to it. Okay. That's the attorney world. Over $1,000, your best advice I would give your client is let's move forward. I know it sucks. I'll find you a better buyer. Let's move forward. You can try to take it you certainly can try to talk to the other agent and say, listen, clearly my client's in the right. I think you should talk to your client. Maybe we can work something out, but you're not an attorney. And if it's going to get to that level, I don't want to get sidemarked too much, but our office does require a deposit release to be signed, by both parties before we're going to release escrow. And there can be a problem reselling the home if you don't have a deposit release done. Okay. That's a whole other discussion for another time. And I'd kind of rather let Mitchell kind of talk about it. But, a lot of people feel you cannot properly sell a home to someone else if we are still holding a deposit under a disputed contract. Okay. There's so many questions around that we're not going to do it in this class. Okay. But that's something, just understand, if you want to move forward quickly, get a deposit release, get the seller to move forward, get the buyers to move forward, and just keep moving forward. Right. Okay. But that's what this language does. It gives the right to the broker to collect half the deposit if a deposit had been retained by the seller, as long as it's not more than what the full commission would have been. Okay. B, the seller shall not pay any other broker for services in connection with sale of the property, nor give any instructions that reduces the broker's fee, except if the broker has given written consent, meaning the seller cannot just arbitrarily decide to lower your commission. Okay. Acceptance of escrowed funds will not constitute consent. What's that mean? If you take less in escrow for an offer than what your full commission is, that's not implying to the seller that we're willing to accept that amount as commission. Just being clear that the escrowed money received by the brokerage firm isn't the commission, okay? Should the seller violate the foregoing provisions, the broker initiates or is caused to participate in any lawsuit, arbitration, or other proceedings, including an interpleader action, the broker shall be reimbursed by the seller for broker's reasonable attorney's fees and costs, and to receive from the seller interest at the legal rate on the amount due. Broker. All disputes, claims, or controversies arising out of the relation related to this agreement shall, upon demand of either party, be submitted to the arbitration to the local board of realtors. This is like the same paragraph that's in the buyer agency form we did yesterday, right? So I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it clearly just describes how, we're going to go to arbitration first. Who is that panel? How is it going to work, right? If I offered you a tender offer or you offered me a tender offer before we got to that point and we rejected it, but a court felt that it was reasonable, then attorney's fees may not be able to be collected, things like that, right? Mr. Seller, we're never going to really deal with this paragraph because none of this is really going to happen. So don't worry about it, right? Broker cooperation. The broker hereby advises seller, but let me back up. Even though I just said that, clearly you should still explain to them that this is the process that we will go through should some type of dispute happens. Mr. Seller, I've never had this actually have to take effect. I've never had a dispute problem that we need to use this for, which is the truth. I've never had this happen, right? But just know we've laid out some expectations and rules and ground rules if we do, which is good. Okay. Who would like to read broker cooperation? Anybody? Anybody? Go, Chris. Read a little loud so the players at home can hear you too.
Who's a broker cooperation?
Right, section 5.
Broker hereby advises seller that broker will offer compensation to cooperating real estate licensees as follows. Buyer's agent, blank percent of the selling price.
Yep.
Facilitators, non-agents, blank percent of the selling price. If sub-agency will be offered, consent to sub-agency form must be signed.
So we don't do that, right? We described that on page 1. We don't practice seller sub-agency, right? So that's why there's no bucket for a seller sub-agent commission. Okay, continue.
Seller hereby authorizes the broker to disclose to prospective buyers whether an offer has been submitted on the property and to disclose whether the offer is from a buyer introduced to the property by the listing agent, by another licensee associated with the broker, or by a cooperating broker. Disclosure of the price and other terms of any offer shall remain confidential until closing unless otherwise authorized by seller.
Right. So the seller authorizes that broker, our brokerage, to disclose to buyers whether an offer has been submitted on the property. Hey, do you have any offers on the property? Yes, we do. That's disclosing there's offers on the property, right? I've been authorized to do that, right? And to disclose whether the offer is from a buyer introduced to the property by the listing agent or by another licensee associated with the broker or by a cooperating broker. Great. Do you have any listings, offers directly did you procure any offers, Mr. Listing Agent? Yes, I did. The offers came straight through me. How about from your office? Yes, actually, some agents from our office have them. Great. And the next question should be, is there any commission differential? Is it a dual rate commission? Okay, you need to know that. MLS regulations requires the listing broker to share with you what that differential is. What am I getting at for the newer agents? The total fee that the listing agent and the seller have agreed to is 6%, right? They're co-broking 2.5% to a buyer agent. However, Mr. Seller, if I sell it myself, the fee will be 4%, okay? That is a dual rate commission, not a variable rate commission. It's a dual rate commission, okay? And that needs to be indicated in MLS under exclusive right to sell, dual rate commission. When you put a listing in, it'll ask you, what is this contract? Exclusive right to sell listing agreement, exclusive right to sell variable rate commission, exclusive right to sell dual rate commission, and some others. That would be dual rate. Now, 90% of the time, most agents forget about this and they just write an exclusive right to sell. So you will not know by looking at MLS that it is a dual rate commission. So your job as a good buyer agent is, hey, Frank, you have any offers on the home?
Yes,
Any offers directly through you as a listing agent?
yes.
Frank, do you have a dual rate commission with your client that reduces the fee if you bring an offer in?
What's that?
It's called a dual rate commission, Frank. Did you agree to that in writing, that you will give them a lower fee if you sell it directly to them? If you bring the buyer?
Right.
Oh, there is?
Right.
Great, Frank. I didn't see that in MLS as dual rate, but no big deal. But you need to let me know, what is the differential between your listing fee if it sells with a co-broke or with you?
So I have to give
You have to give the information. If you don't, I'll have to call your broker, Frank, and get the information. Okay? Why? Do you know why? I'll tell you why. I'm just gonna tell you why. Let me just tell you why. Because
I was gonna try to be quiet this whole lesson.
you're so good. I love you, buddy. So basically what's going on here is, if there are two, let's say the house is on for $100,000, not in this world anymore, but let's say there was, it's on for 100 grand. And if the listing agent sells it directly, the fee is 4% or $4,000, right? So the net the seller would receive is $96,000, okay? Now, if, right, now that 6% fee, if it's sold to Ron Carpenito's buyer client, the seller would net what? $94,000, right? $94,000. So two $100,000 offers actually net the client, the seller, a different amount, okay? And that's why MLS requires you as MLS participants to tell buyer agents that there is a difference in commission structure here if I bring the buyer, okay? So that I can consult as a buyer agent to my client and say, listen, Frank has an offer. We don't know what the price of the offer is, but we do know that Frank has a 2% differential for his seller. So Frank's offer is worth 2% more to his seller than our offer will be, okay? So I'll advise my client, you'll need to increase your offer by 2% to hopefully theoretically be on the same playing field as Frank's offer, okay?
Put that dual rate offer when you say what the commission is, or does that come later?
So we use the exclusive right to sell listing agreement form. I suppose there is a exclusive right to sell listing agreement with dual rate commission form, but we don't use that.
So you put, what do you put here?
Well, I don't do dual rate commissions.
Oh.
We don't do dual rate commissions.
Oh.
Most agents don't do dual rate commissions, right? This is why I'm always amazed by buyers who think if they go directly through the listing agent, that their offer is better to the seller for some reason, okay? Because do they think that the seller doesn't have to pay a buyer agent fee? Do they think that the seller is not gonna, it's gonna pay less commission structure? Can it happen? Yes. Does it happen regularly? No. It's not, this is not a normal thing that goes on. Most agents do not do dual rate commissions, okay? Do they do it though? Again, we live in, yesterday, you weren't here. We don't live in a black and white world with this. This is real
I
estate,
didn't know there was
okay?
a class.
We live in a gray, the buyer side was yesterday. So we live in a gray world, right?
Yeah.
So you have some agents that are out there saying, hey, that do that all the time, right? But most agents don't. It's a fee. Doesn't matter where the buyer comes from. Mr. Seller, we don't want to confuse things for the public. We have to have fair and honest business dealings. Same fee, whether it comes through me or it comes through them. Leave it alone, just do it, right? Don't get overcomplicated, right? Okay. But if you do choose in your business practices to give some type of a discounted fee, if you procure the buyer yourself, then that would be a dual rate commission. And you need to indicate that in MLS as a dual rate commission, okay? Yeah, you know, guys, this shouldn't be slow time for you, although a lot of agents, it is a slow time, right? But it shouldn't be. But if you have time, you should go to your MLS PIN account and look up the actual rules and regulations of MLS PIN and read them, okay? Because you're agreeing to participate in the MLS system by being a member. And it goes through all the listing types and what they mean, right? And how to interpret them, okay? All right, very good. And maybe we'll do a class on that too. We'll do a class on MLS PIN listing type arrangements and things like that, right? Okay. Do you want some water? I haven't even touched this. I just poured it. I never even drank it.
Thank you.
Water. Okay. Let's continue. It's only 12:09, plenty of time, and this is again, the most important form to spend time on. All right, so we talked about the broker cooperation. Chris read that to us, right? And it says here, disclosure of the price and other terms of any offer shall remain confidential until closing, unless otherwise authorized by seller. Now, if you were in the buyer class yesterday, we informed the buyer in the exclusive buyer agency agreement, the buyer should not consider the terms of their offers will remain confidential. So you've explained to the buyer side that your offer may not be kept confidential, may be used against you, may be used to drum up a better offer for the seller, right? And right here, we're saying, we're gonna disclose offer, if offers are here, we're gonna disclose who brought the offers, right? But we're not gonna disclose anything else unless it's been authorized by the seller, which indicates that you can disclose stuff if you have permission from your seller, right? Which one of our forms that we're gonna go over today does get that permission, if you want to use it. Here we go. 6, broker's duties. Shannon, why don't you read broker's duties in the back?
The broker agrees to use reasonable efforts in marketing the property and agrees to list the property with blank.
Stop. So that's gonna put in there MLS PIN. We're in Massachusetts, and that is the name of our multiple listing service, MLS PIN. Continue when you can.
The broker shall have no obligation to continue to market the property after an offer has been accepted.
Mhm.
The broker is not hired as a property inspector, tax advisor, or attorney, and if such services are desired, selling to paraprofessionals.
Right.
It shall not constitute a violation of any duty owed by the broker or by any agent associated with the broker to advise a prospective buyer of the availability of a competing property or to assist a buyer with the purchase of another property.
Right. All good points there, right? Let's break it down real quick. We're gonna put the listing in the MLS, you know, when we've agreed to put it in the MLS. The broker shall have no obligations to market the property after an offer has been accepted. Once you've accepted an offer, right? The property goes to contingent status or under agreement status, right? Technically, you have an offer on the table and you don't have to continue to market this property. But Mr. Seller, we will. Of course, we're going to. I mean, as a matter of business, I want to market my property as long as possible, as, you know, I want to get backup offers in, right? I want to get, you know, more prime property team recognition out there. I want to be able to get more buyers to call me, things like that, right? So yeah, we're definitely going to keep doing it. And the next section is just, hey, you know, I'm not any one of these services, right? And I love this section here. We're advising the seller that we are going to be able to show other buyers other competing properties, right? Because guess what? Like we said yesterday, you can't work with just one client at a time and feed your family. You need to work with multiple clients. But again, you host an open house, you might have some people who think you're there working for them. Buyer comes in, kind of like the house, don't like the house. You know, your job as an agent is to help people find and buy homes, right? So you can say, well, if you don't like my home I'm listing, you know, there's actually a couple other homes nearby that I'd be happy to show you. Nothing wrong with that, right? But some sellers will get upset with that. What do you mean you showed them other homes? You're supposed to be pushing my home, right? You can see how that could be hairy, right? How about you're in a condominium complex and there's 5 condos for sale. You're listing one of them, right? They don't like this one. Well, there's 4 other ones right down the hall. Let me see if I can set up a showing and maybe get you in there, right? You might be able to do that, right? What do you mean you sold the other units down the hall? They see your Facebook post. Under agreement, right? And your client's friends with you on Facebook. You sold unit 205 when you're my listing agent? This will happen to you, okay? Well, yeah, I mean, you know, I'm a realtor. I sell homes. You're my agent, right? No, well, I told you right up front that it's not a violation that I have to show more homes, you know? That's what you're doing. Okay. Now, consent to designated agency and consent to dual agency, 7 and 8. These are the same paragraphs that were in the buyer agency agreement yesterday. Okay, but I am going to go through them because they are in this form. Okay, and we want to finish this form up. So Frank, you read 7, consent to designated agency.
Okay. Consent to designated agency. A designated agent is a real estate agent who has been appointed by a broker or salesperson to represent a buyer as a designated buyer's agent.
Mhm. Yep.
Should that be? Okay. Or to represent a seller as a designated seller's agent.
Right. Frank, stop. Frank, your hiccup was you thought, why did it say buyer there? We're talking about a listing form, right?
Yes.
Right. This is the general paragraph on describing what designated agency is. And designated agency applies to both buy side and sell side. So it's a general statement.
Okay.
Continue.
When a buyer or seller consents to designated agency, only that designated agent represents the buyer or seller.
Right.
Any other agents affiliated with the broker may represent another party to the transaction. And by consenting to designated agency, the buyer or seller permits those agents to represent another party.
Mhm.
Individuals who are designated agents owe fiduciary duties to their respective clients.
Right.
Seller is further advised that a designated seller's agent will represent the seller and will owe the seller the duties of loyalty, full disclosure, confidentiality, to account for funds, reasonable care, and obedience to lawful instructions.
Right.
B, all other licensees affiliated with the appointed broker will not represent the seller, nor will they owe other duties specified in paragraph A to the seller,
Mhm.
and may potentially represent the buyer.
Mm.
And C, if designated agents affiliated with the same broker represent the seller, the
And buyer.
buyer in the transaction, the appointed broker will be in dual agency as
Correct.
to any conflicting interest to the seller and buyer, but will continue to owe the seller and buyer the duties of confidentiality, material information, and to account for funds. By signing this agreement, the seller consents. Am I supposed to yell?
You're doing great.
By signing this agreement, the seller consents to designated agency. If the broker is a designated agent for the buyer and seller in a transaction, a notice will be given. The designated agents from the seller
Is
here.
our, yep, and then you put our name there. All right, let's stop there. Lot going on in that paragraph, right? Designated agency. Hey, Mr. Seller, this is consent to designated agency. To summarize it real quick for you, when you hire Ron Carpenito as your agent, I and only I'll be representing you within our office. Any other brokers that might bring the buyers, because we have 150 agents in here, Chris. So it's quite possible the buyer might come from our office through another broker in our office, other agent. That broker will be representing their best interests and not yours, even though they're affiliated with our office. That's what designated agency is, right? A dual agency office, it'd be different, right? That other agent would actually have some type of representation to you, and I would have some representation to their buyer, even though I would never know them. But in 2005, everything kind of shifted to designated agency when the state of Massachusetts put this into effect, okay? So pretty much every real office operates as a designated agency office, okay? Only small mom and pops and some teams operate as dual agency offices or teams, right? For the teams out there, we can have a private conversation about that, just because, designated agency needs to be handled differently with teams in the way, like, if you have buy side and sell side on your teams, you need to be operating in a certain way to protect those confidentiality and MTVs and things. So we can talk about that if you're on a team and you want to talk more about that, we can do that later.
But
Frank,
if I'm a buyer's agent,
Yeah.
you're a seller's agent.
Yeah.
With the contracts with the brokerage firm, Susan's always a dual agent.
yes. So what Frank is talking about is if the buyer comes through our office and the seller is in our office, Susan Roquark, who's the broker of record, would now be in what's called dual agency and would be neutral to either party's interests if she had to intervene in any way in the process. Okay. Good point. What else on that? Everyone's understanding that? Any questions on that? All right. So the designated agent for the seller is Ron Carpenito. Your name here, right? If you're on a team, I would recommend you spell out the name of the team members that are going to be
Team or team members.
team and team members, right? The Liriano team specifically, Jen and Moses are handling the sell side, right? They're the representatives for the seller. If it's the entire team, then it would be the Liriano team, right? Now, the Liriano team, I'm picking on you now, if you're out there and you're listing a property and the entire team is representing the seller, but yet other team members are procuring buyers and have buyer clients, right? And representing them as buyer agents, now you're in dual agency, buddy. You guys are in dual agencies, right? Because your team is representing both clients. This is where it gets confusing for teams, okay? I recommend you have a buy side to your team and a sell side to your team, and the paths shall not cross, right? Listing side team is not disclosing any details to buy side team about the new listing and why they're selling and how they have to sell. And the buy side of the team is not disclosing to the list side of the team, we've got new buyers that have to buy in 90 days and they can spend up to this amount of money and they could, because there could be confusion there. I hired the Slariano team and it's their listing. Who are they representing here? See what I'm saying? So it can get complicated. We can have a further discussion offline about that, as well as with Susan, the broker. She probably want to talk more about that. Make sure you're not misrepresenting anything, right? All right. In the event the designated agent appointed to represent the seller ceases to be associated with the broker, the seller hereby consents to appointment by broker of one or more agents associated with the broker to represent the seller. Written notice of that appointment will be given by the broker to the seller in a timely fashion. So sadly, agents pass away. They pass away, right? The contract still exists within the brokerage firm. The broker can assign a new agent to continue on with the client. Sadly, agents leave the office, right? Now, Keller Williams, we let you take your listings with you. We'll release the listing for you to go to your new brokerage firm. But if you worked at some of the older firms, they won't release the listing. The listing is between the brokerage firm and they're going to keep it. So they're going to assign someone new to that listing. Okay? Got it. Next page, consent to dual agency. Amy, you want to read that? Woo.
Seller understands that the designated seller's agent with whom seller is working also represents buyer, and that if the designated seller's agent introduces the property to a buyer who is also represented by that agent, a dual agency
Will be created. So what does that mean, Amy? If I have the listing, it's my listing contract, and my buyer client who's hired me with a buyer agency agreement, I'm working with them, I've disclosed I'm their buyer agent. They want to buy my home that I'm listing. That is dual agency now. Now we're in dual agency. Okay, continue.
The designated seller's agent may act as dual agent who represents both prospective buyer and seller with their informed written consent.
Stop. The consent is right here, this paragraph, right? It's in this form. You're getting consent when you get hired with a listing agreement and hired with a buyer agency agreement. Continue.
A dual agent is authorized to assist the buyer and the seller in a transaction, but shall be neutral with regards to any conflicting interests of the buyer or the seller. Consequently, a dual agent will not have the ability to satisfy fully the duties of loyalty, full disclosure, reasonable care, and obedience to law instructions.
All right, stop. Hold your spot there. So remember the fiduciary duties, right? Full fiduciary duties are old car. Obedience, loyalty, disclosure, confidentiality, accounting, reasonable care. When you're in dual agency, you cannot fully satisfy that to both parties. You can't advocate to the betterment or detriment of either party because you're working with both parties, right? But what you are still responsible for is CA, confidentiality and accounting of funds, right? You can't fully satisfy disclosure because some disclosure might violate one of your party's MTVs, right? You're always responsible for disclosure of property defects. That doesn't matter whether you're in dual agency. It's the MTVs that we're talking about, right? Disclosures of that stuff. And remember, facilitation was right? You have a duty of disclosure and accounting of funds, right? But not confidentiality, right? Remember, there was no confidentiality with facilitation, right? All right, continue.
But shall still owe the duty of confidentiality and material information and the duty to account for funds.
Right. CA, dual agency, facilitation, da. Full agency, old car. Got it? Good.
Seller understands that material information received from either client that is confidential may not be disclosed by a dual agent, except one, if disclosure is expressly
Authorized. You can tell them this, Amy. Go ahead and tell them. I don't mind.
If such disclosure is required by law,
Mr. Seller, the law requires I tell them this. I don't know what that would be yet, but go ahead.
if such disclosure is intended to prevent illegal conduct,
I wish I had a good example. I don't have an example for you on that, but okay, continue.
if such disclosure is necessary to
To prosecute.
prosecute a claim against the person represented or to defend the claim against the broker or salesperson.
Yep. So if we go to court, then all bets are off. I'm going to start disclosing stuff that I need to disclose to protect myself or, things like that. Yep.
This duty of confidentiality shall continue after termination of the brokerage relationship.
Right.
When the agent with whom the seller is working is a dual agent, the broker with whom the agent is affiliated is also a dual agent and shall remain neutral as to any conflicting interests of the buyer and seller.
Right. Okay, stop there. The confidentiality shall continue after termination of the broker relationship. When does it end?
Never,
7 years? You?
never.
You? Yes.
5 years.
5 years? You?
7.
You? When does confidentiality end? Never? No idea yet?
No.
It's never. It's never. It's never. To the grave. Take it to the grave. You do not disclose MTVs to your clients ever.
But the records we keep for 7 years.
Right, records is typically 7 years. You can cut them after that. So, when you hear agents talking about their clients, they're violating confidentiality all the time, right? It's bad. Don't do it, okay? If it ever gets back that you broke someone's trust like that, or the NTVs and things like that, it's bad. You shouldn't do that. We do it, how can we tell stories all the time. And you could tell stories and discuss, because you're telling stories to, educate and to express and share stories, because that's how we grow. Just make sure you're not defining names, or you're trying to keeping things, vague as best you can. Like when I say I had this client one time, you don't know who the client was. You don't know this, you don't know many things about that. But just don't get specific, like, oh, my client, Steve, you can't believe this. Don't go into that. Keep it quiet. Ziploc mouths. Go ahead. Question.
You're a buyer's agent,
I'm a buyer's agent, baby.
and you get your client a house and they move into the house.
Yes.
5 years later, they want to sell the house,
Okay.
but they don't hire you.
Mhm.
You're a buyer agent for another
Right.
client,
Right.
and you go to represent them buying that house from the guy who you had old car requirements
Right.
to. You know stuff about this person.
I do.
Is that-
Can't tell them. Confidentiality remains to the grave.
So you can't use that information to adequately represent your buyer.
Again, we talk about these black and white gray zones. Frank, you love stumbling into gray zones. And, these are things that are likely never going to happen to you, but they might.
Okay.
And I would say that I think if you were erring on the side of what is right, you're not going to divulge MTVs. First of all, what MTVs are you talking about? Because the MTVs I learned about the buyer, the now seller who was my buyer, were from 5 years ago. Motives, why are they buying? Terms, what are they willing to accept? Values, what's important in the transaction? They may not even be the same MTVs of why they're selling. So it might actually behoove me not to say anything, because it may not be even
Yeah.
credible at that point, right? Good answer. I just gave you a good answer.
That was good.
That's a good one.
That's why you're teaching and I'm not.
Thanks, buddy. So yeah, I would just say take it to the, hey, you know what? I helped these people buy that home, and their cousin got into the business and they went with their cousin to list it. I know all about the home. I still have a duty to disclose property defects and things like that. So I could say, when I happen to know that the foundation has a crack in it because I was at the home inspection when it attended. That's not a violation of anything. That's a duty to disclose, superseding a lot of different things, right? But yeah, I would stay away from anything about the client, the now
So
seller.
you can talk about the property, but not the client.
I have a duty to disclose, right?
Okay.
And frankly, you're talking 5 years in the future. So what I learned 5 years ago may not even be a legitimate disclosure, because it may not even exist anymore.
Like if we talk about something that happened at the inspection 5 years ago, would you even bring it up? Because it could have been fixed.
Exactly, right? I think how would Ron handle this, right? I would say, hey, good news, Mr. Buyer. Let's go look at 125 Main. I actually have been in the home many times. My client actually bought it. They're reselling it with the family member. So I know a lot about the home. They say, great, what do you know about it? I might say, hey, I'd rather not say yet because I don't know what they've really done in there. It might be completely different. Why don't we set up a show and get in there and take a look?
So
Right.
is it fair to say that old car goes with the individual, not with the property?
Definitely.
So you
Absolutely.
can disclose whatever you want, whatever you know about the property, not about the client. yeah,
Right.
this guy's a real stickler, or he's a pushover, or,
Right.
Can't
See, now
talk
that's
about
what
that.
agents are gonna do is say exactly what you did, but you should.
okay, so
Right.
that's off limits,
Right.
but yeah, that roof, it was bad when he bought it.
Right.
And doesn't look like he's done anything to it. That's the property.
That's the
not
property, man.
individual.
Yeah,
Okay.
keep it focused on the property.
Okay.
Good point. Keep it focused on the property. All right. We read consent to dual agency, right? By signing the agreement, you consent to have dual agency. By signing this agreement, seller consents to have the designated seller's agent act as a dual agent. Except as expressly provided, the dual agency shall not extend to other licensees with the broker. If dual agency occurs, a notice will be given. So what is this notice? There is a notice. Open.
Maybe.
Do you want to close that? Do you mind? I love babies, but not during performance classes. It's kind of hard sometimes. So there will be a form. So if you enter dual agency, there will be a form. It's in the forms, folder to give to the clients. We are now in dual agency. It is not a consent to dual agency. Consent occurs right here when they're signing the actual agreement. Now, in my lifespan, hundreds of homes I've listed. One time I've had a seller say, I don't consent to dual agency. Don't consent to dual agency. Huh?
You will have to change the formula, right?
Correct. So what's your answer? What do you say? You're in front of someone. I don't consent to that. I don't want to consent to that. Right. You don't know what to say, right? Right. So what you would say is, geez, I can appreciate that. I'd like to understand what your concerns are about it. You want to kind of go through the process. So you're comfortable hiring me and signing this without dual agency being a possibility, and you can discuss it with them, You could certainly write in additional terms, something that might work out for both of you, right? Some people want to modify lines in the contract. I want to change this, I want to change that. That's when you really kind of have to back off, say, gee, I appreciate that. I hope you understand that, I do need to talk to my broker about this. I can't necessarily mark up and sign this contract in different ways. It sounds like are you sure you want to work together? Should we go back and talk more about what's important to you in this process, right? And then go from there. I mean, that's very rarely will happen, very
Can
rarely.
you just strike out the paragraph, or do you put it under, you're not modifying, you're just striking out that whole paragraph? Or do you put it in additional terms?
Right. So if I'm towing the company line at this moment, you and me and you do not have the right to change this contract as written.
Okay.
On behalf of this brokerage firm. Okay. This brokerage firm has authorized this contract to be signed for this brokerage firm. Okay. We're not attorneys. We can't be striking stuff from paragraphs, things like that, right? Now, if you talk to Susan Roquard, our broker, and said, I have a client that wants to take a listing, they don't consent to dual agency, can we strike that paragraph? She's gonna say, sure, strike the paragraph, right? But you have to run it by the broker, right? Additional terms. We can play a little bit, I don't want to say loosey-goosey, but some agents will write things in here. Either party may terminate this contract within 24 hours written notice prior to an offer being accepted, things like that, like kind of get out of jail free cards, things like that. People write that in sometimes. I would never write that in. Don't write that in, right? Some people write things in like, okay, we talk about the dual rate thing, right? Total commission to be 5% if sold through Ron Carpenito Prime Property Team with no other agent involved, right? We can write that in. We write stuff like that in sometimes. Here's one that will come up. Ron, I'm going to hire you to sell my home. My cousin John might want to buy it though. And if John buys it, how do we handle that? Right? So this is where you have to you kind of pre-think this out, how you're going to run your business, right? So what I do is I'll say, Chris, that's great. Why doesn't he want to buy it now? Like I would talk about it. Where are we in the process with this cousin, right? Your mission is to probably try to bridge the gap between, this guy, John, if you hire me tonight, Chris, I will then reach out to John and get him off the fence into the home when it's right, to show the home, to get him pre-qualified and negotiate in your best interest. And they'll be like, many people are like, great, that's exactly what I wanted to hear. I want him to have the first choice. sign away, right? You're their agent, you're gonna go to John, there's no, but some people are gonna be like, well, I don't wanna pay commission if I sell it to John. I want you to do all your work. And if John buys it, I want it to be over and I could sell it to John without paying you anything. Wrong answer. You don't go to work for anybody that wants a named exclusion in there that you're gonna get cut out of this transaction after you giving them your time, insight, XYZ to go to work. So, but you might be up against someone like this. So what do? You gotta come up with some type of reasonable that you feel comfortable working with. And they feel, hey, it's gotta be, Mr. Seller, it's gotta be win-win or no deal. Win for me. I'm gonna work with a client who wants my services. I'm gonna earn my fee. Win for you. You're gonna get a high level of service, a high level of experience.
Walk away.
Of course you can walk away. You don't have to take every listing, right?
Because, oh,
I don't agree to those terms. It's a bilateral agreement, right? So what do? You might come to the conclusion of seller may be released from contract, by a particular date or by, if selling to a particular family member. You might say, for the first, prior to going live marketing or named exclusion, John Smith, to be between this date and that date, right? So, hey, okay, Frank, you need 2 weeks. Would 2 weeks be fair for you to vet out whether you're gonna sell to your brother or not? You wanna handle that on your own and cut me out. I get it. I don't wanna do too much work though, of course, if that's gonna happen. So it shouldn't take more than 2 weeks for John to get pre-qualified, see your home and decide whether or not he wants to buy the home. Is that fair? Okay, great. Let's sign up tonight that says there's a 2-week window for you to vet out John. After that, I'm gonna go to work. We're gonna market the home. And if John buys the home, he's gonna buy it through us and it's gonna be like a normal transaction, right? Too many agents have made the mistake of putting a named exclusion in here without a date being affiliated with it. And so you go to work, you're paying money to photo the home up. You might pay money to have it cleaned. You might do some upfront stuff, right? And then 2 months down the road, they want to sell. The other reason why you want a time limit on it is, this is where it can get really hairy. I don't know, it's good that we talk about this, is when you put the named exclusion, if you put a named exclusion in here and there's no time frame on it, and you put it on the market and you bring a buyer to the table and there's now a contract to sell to somebody, what if cousin John now wants to buy the home, right? And the seller thinks, well, I signed a contract that says this whole thing, if John wants to buy it, this thing is all canceled. What if the seller now thinks that they can get out of the deal they signed with buyer number one? That's why you can't be loosey-goosey with what you write. And that's why we don't want you necessarily writing too much stuff in without vetting it out with your broker.
what I'm
Okay.
thinking is that a seller wants to sell it to their cousin.
Yep.
But they don't know how much to sell it for. So they'll have
Okay.
you do all the work
Yeah.
to procure a bunch of offers. Won't get accepted.
Right, because in the back of their mind, they're trying to hold out for,
They're trying to see.
What the market
am I
will
getting
bear.
for offers, and then they go to cousin,
cousin Vinny.
I was gonna say Guido, but.
Okay.
Okay, we're both Italian.
I'm
so that's
offended,
okay.
Frank.
Yeah, well, yeah,
Go ahead.
like I said, and then come in and you've done all the work and, to know how much they should sell to their cousin.
Right, and if he was a named exclusion,
Right.
right, all that stuff, exactly. This is
By the
why you
way,
gotta have a
we have
time
to-
limit on these
When
things.
you have a named exclusion, does it have to be official name or can it be, my cousin's son?
No, I think it should be a real name.
Okay, well, I'm just
Yeah.
asking.
Yeah, no, I think it should be a real name, yeah. And that's the named exclusion. So any questions on that? Anybody out there in the world? Okay, good. Additional terms, yeah, I wouldn't be writing too many additional terms in there because then you could be perceived as practicing some type of law. If you have, as you're building your business, guys, right? And you're learning more here and there, pre-write stuff up before you go on a listing appointment. Run it by the broker. Hey, I'm going on this thing. I want to add this into my contract. What do you think of this language? Yep, that's fine. No, that's no good. Why would you want to do that? Let's talk around that, right? Don't just do stuff at the listing appointment. Okay, good. All right, that's the biggest form in this whole day. Let's move forward now. Now, this is, all right, we did this one, consent to electronic delivery. We did that yesterday, so I'm gonna skip past that so that the people who were here yesterday can get out of here. Wire fraud, we did that yesterday. All right, this one. KW Success, addendum to exclusive listing agreement designated agency with consent to designated agency. Seller authorization for non-designated agent to hold an open house. What is this form? Okay. Well, you got a listing, right? And this form explains to the seller, hey, Mr. Seller, good news. We have 150 agents at our office and you live on a main street. It's a perfect home to host open houses more regularly. Right now, I can't host them every week and all the time, but I'd love to offer it to our agents in the office that might want to show it and might want to hold open houses on your behalf. This form just informs you that those agents won't represent you. They're not your agent. They're going to be coming here to host this open house as a facilitator. Okay. Their goal is to try to attract a buyer, at which point they may become the buyer's agent, but they are not going to know any of your motives, terms, and values. They're not going to know why we're selling. They're just going to host an open house for you. Are you okay with that? Yeah, that's great. Sign here. No, I don't want anyone that's not my agent hosting an open house. Okay, great. Don't sign this paperwork, right? Now, you better have this signed. If you have a listing and you're saying, does anyone want to host an open house? You better have this signed, okay? Because the person hosting that open house isn't there as a designated seller's agent. They're there as a facilitator. The placard they put up isn't going to say the agent hosting this house is the seller's representative. It's going to say the agent hosting this open house is here as a facilitator. Okay. Your seller needs to know that that agent doesn't represent them. Why? Because here's what happens. Here's what happens. Here's what happens. You, the listing agent, go to the beach that day. You think that Frank is hosting the open house for you as a facilitator. Frank goes to the house early. The seller is there. Okay, the seller is on his way out. Hey, Frank, thanks for hosting the open house today. Get this thing sold. Okay, I want it sold. I told Ron it needs to be sold by tomorrow because I'm moving to California. Now the seller is starting to expound upon Frank, all their motives, terms, all their confidentiality stuff. And Frank, don't tell him about the crack in the foundation. Don't tell him about this. Frank, don't do that. Frank, do this, right? They think Frank's his agent, their agent, because he's from Keller Williams Realty. Okay. Consumers don't listen. You guys, your heads are spinning right now, I'm sure, about all this disclosure, dual agency. All do you think that if you licensed agents can't understand this thoroughly, that a consumer who comes in contact with a real estate professional once every 9 years on average is going to remember and understand at depth? No, right? So you have to understand, right? And the number one reason for lawsuits in our industry is lack of communication around representation and expectations and things like that. So you need to, hey, Mr. Seller, I'm gonna have Chris host an open house. She's gonna be a facilitator. So if you come in contact with Chris, don't tell her anything that, confidential about the home. She's just there to open the door, turn the lights on, let people in, give us more exposure, right? And hopefully Chris will attract a buyer and become a buyer agent at that point for them, right? So that's what this form's all about. Yeah, vacant homes, this is great, by the way, because you want to have as many open houses as possible, yeah.
If someone doesn't want to sign this, we don't have to have them
No,
their initials that we gave it to them?
No, not this form. This form is fine. They just understand if they don't agree to this, then you can't have other agents in the office hosting open houses there. Now, what happens if Shannon loves to travel and she's going to Italy for 2 weeks, right? And she just took a brand new listing. They want to, and your suite of marketing services includes open houses every Sunday, right, or whatever. Now, is Shannon needs someone in the office, right? At that point, Shannon should be having a relationship, maybe with Robin. She brought you in, right, to be a co-designated seller's agent, because you're actually leaving now. It's not like you're gonna be off the grid. You're going to Italy. You're not taking offers, you're not doing business, right? You need an agent to work on your behalf while you're here. That's when you would add, you'd have a conversation with the seller. I'm going to Italy, 2 weeks gonna be gone. I'm gonna amend our listing agreement to add Robin Renahan on as a designated agent. So while I'm gone, she's basically stepping into my shoes as your agent. That's the difference, right? Now Robin is a designated agent. So when you go away for a length of time, you need an agent in the office to cover your business. They need to be added onto your listing or buyer agency agreements with an amendment of some sorts, okay? Definitely with listings. If you're going away for 2 weeks or more and you get someone covering your listing, you should add them on as a designated agent. Okay?
That's another question now. I'm gonna
Yeah.
put Frank and go into the gray area.
Oh, we're going to the gray zone.
So.
All right.
If that happened and Robin was covering, and
Hmm.
then I come back and Robin brings in a buyer.
As a seller agent, like directly, an unrepresented buyer came off the street.
Or
And-
one of her buyers that like she had.
She has a buyer client, so then she'd be a dual agency at that point.
it would be doing
Yep.
this,
If one of her buyers that has hired her, she's got a contract for buyer agency with them and a disclosure form as buyer agent, she's a buyer agent, and they're gonna buy a home that now she is a designated seller's agent on, that's dual agency. Right. Which is nothing wrong with that. Remember, the advocacy rules drop out. Now, what happens when you come back? I mean, this is where it gets confusing. Now you come back, right? That's when you have a conversation with Susan Roquart, the broker, right? And say, how should we handle this, Susan? I'm back. One of her own buyers, and Susan might say, here's how we're gonna handle that. You're gonna now work exclusively with seller, you're gonna work with buyer, and then we'll work it out with the clients and things like that, right? Okay. Yeah, these things do get confusing. They can get confusing. All right, what are we doing now? We did the facilitation form. The next form, now this form is an 8-page document. We're not gonna read this whole form. And it's not required by law. But this is the seller statement of property condition, okay? It's been modified over the years. There are different versions of it. This is the newest version of it, right? It's 8 pages long. Bye-bye. Are you leaving?
Yeah.
Okay, take care. Have a good day. It is not required in our office to have a seller's disclosure statement, okay? It is not required by law to have a seller's disclosure statement. But as a practicing business professional, my team requires my sellers to fill out a form like this, okay? Unless there's a reason not to, or they don't know the home, it's an estate sale, they live out of the state, things like that. I want all my listings to have disclosures done on them by the seller, okay? But it's not required by law, it's not required by the office, okay? But as a matter of business, I like to have it, okay? Why? Because buyers like these forms. Buyers like to have some disclosure. They like to know the seller is being upfront with them, right? It can also add some protectionary measures to the seller if the crap hit the proverbial fan down the road and there was a lawsuit. You could kind of maybe say, hey, well, we disclosed it to you. It was written right here that there was some water in the basement from time to time and things like that. And this has happened to me. Happened to me in Andover on Elm Street. I listed a home. They disclosed the water in the basement. 3 years go by and the agent calls me up. She's like, yeah, the client just got flooded. They're really upset. They feel like you didn't disclose it, that you knew. I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm like, pull out your disclosure statement. It's right on there next to their signature, right? Never heard from her again. You know, done. Case closed. They signed it. It was disclosed. They knew, right? You'll sleep. Oh, I feel so good when you have this sign, right? Now, is it the end of the world? Is it, I mean, is it gonna be, Superman cape blanket to protect you from everything? No, but it's something. It shows intent to be, forthcoming with information.
I've
Yes.
heard conflicting advice.
Of course.
on How to advise,
Because we're in a gray zone, right? We're in the gray zone, Frank,
how to advise a seller.
about that.
Yeah.
Right.
I've been told by some people, you give them the form and then you leave the house
Right,
and you give them no advice.
right.
And or some will say, well, what about this? What should I say? So
Sure.
what's your advice on that?
Yeah, so, technically, you don't know anything about the home. You don't, as an agent, know, your licensing, the license that you carry is a real estate license to bring buyer and seller together to consummate a deal, not to give advice on how to disclose what is wrong with their home, right? Hey, Ron, I get some water in my basement. What should I write about that?
So you get water in your basement.
Nothing wrong with what you just said, Frank. That would be fine if you think so. Is that how you'd like to describe it? I mean, you want language around that? I mean, I would say something like, hey, you know, my licensing law precludes me from, you know, actually telling you how to disclose details on your home. I don't know anything about your home except for what you've decided to tell me tonight and what I've seen with my eyes, and I'm not an inspector or an
You
engineer.
didn't advise them on
How to fill it out? No, I said, I don't advise them. I said, but if you have questions, give me, if you don't understand a question, like some things like, you can, oh, my back. You can, like, some people say, what does it mean, easement, common driveway, or right of way? Well, Frank, an easement is when X, Y, Z. A common driveway is someone that you share with another party. You know, a right of way is where you've given some written authorizations, you know, I'll explain. Do you have any of that? No, I don't. Okay, well then, you know, right, no, right? But you're asking me, Frank, how do I explain my water leaking? You tell me. Maybe if it was me, Frank, I might say something like, if it was me, Frank, I'd try to explain maybe when I get water, how I get water, where the water comes from, you know, how bad it might be. I try to give some disclosure on that, you know, but I wouldn't tell them what to say. Just say it gets damp during heavy rain. I wouldn't tell them what to write. Does that make sense, guys? I hope. Yeah, you should never, because you never want someone coming back saying, my agent told me to write that. My agent told me to say that,
That's why I brought it up.
because they will throw you under the bus. Okay? All right, this is our newest form that is definitely, I would say, heavily required nowadays, right? We've had so many like malarkey around this. It's called the Guide to Selling Your Home, Inclusions and Exclusions. Inclusions and exclusions. What is coming with this home sale and what is the seller intending to take with them with the home sale, right? And what is not applicable. This is an example, right? I have my own version of this. I believe there's an actual official MAR form that might be a more official form. But this is the office's general form. You can also add on to this, like there's some other items, like something else that might be remaining, right? It's very important and get it signed because it helps to avoid lack of clarity at closing. Recent updates and upgrades, right? Again, this is an example form, right? I like to get my clients, my sellers, to write down a little bit about a recent update and upgrade, right? It's best if they can put the year that the update and upgrade was done, right? And utility information. Buyers like to know who is the electric provider, the gas provider, the water provider, the cable provider, or if there are any condo fees. So get these forms done. I mean, are they required by law and by the office? Would we reject a listing because not getting one of these? No. But this inclusion and exclusion form should be required, very heavily required. No seller should have any reason not to want to fill this form out or even the utilities forms out. Okay? I think a lot of times it's the laziness of the agent not wanting to get it filled out or not wanting to spend time to get it filled out. Or, hey, we'll just sign the contract today and then before we go on the market, I'll get that stuff over to you and we'll get it signed before we go on the market, right? And then they forget to do it. Now they're on the market and the market's so fast and then the offers come in 3 days and they forgot to get the form signed or get it filled out. And now you're getting questions after the offer's been accepted. Well, are they leaving this? Are they leaving that? Or the seller's like, did you tell them we're not taking the paints out of here? We're leaving the paint, right? Did you tell them we're going to leave the swing set? Did you tell them we're going to leave the hockey rink that I had to deal with? Actually, oh my God, the Linfield home again. I'm on the final walkthrough. Now, I cannot be more specific with my clients. Broom swept, free of all debris, all personal belongings gone, everything out of the house, you know? I go to this final walkthrough. The buyer agent doesn't show up, lame, right? I'm at the final walkthrough with the buyer. Okay. Now I walk around, she
The buyer's agent?
did not show up to the final walkthrough.
So you're the seller.
I'm the seller's agent. And I'm doing the
walk.
walkthrough with the buyer, right? Crazy, right? So all listing agents should be at the final walkthroughs, by the way. You absolutely go to your final walkthroughs, okay? Final walkthroughs for the new people are just before closing this final walkthrough. We go around now we're in the backyard. We go behind the garage area. There's another shed that, you know, I knew there was a shed there, right? And I'm not worried. Everything out, free and clear of all debris, all your stuff gone. It should be empty. These are the instructions. I get it in writing. I send it to my client. They know about it. We open up the shed, lawnmower, snow blower, you know, all this stuff, right? And I'm like, huh. Now I'm thrown for a loop. I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I'm like, you know, maybe he's wanted to leave that for you, right? Wasn't on the inclusions exclusion sheet. She's like, yeah, I love it. Great. She's happy, right? Gonna get a free lawnmower and a free snowblower, right? We walk past it and there's a hockey rink. Like, some people like an outdoor skating rink in their backyard during the wintertime. This thing was like stacks of like plastic pieces that you lay out to make an ice skating rink. And I'm like, what the hell? I didn't know what to say. She goes, what is that? I go, I don't know what that is, right? I didn't even know what it was, right? I go, but I'll find out. I go, we're gonna have to call the seller on this. I go, I'm sorry about that. I'm sure he'll be happy to remove it if we need to. Call my client. I'm like, what is this? He goes, oh, that's my neighbors. I go, your neighbors? I go, what about the snowblower and the lawnmower? Oh yeah, that's the neighbors too. I go, I just told this lady you're giving it to her, right? See this miscommunication, inclusions, exclusions, what is staying, what is going? Let's walk around. Let's be, and I've been doing it 17 years and I didn't notice it at the first thing. You've got to be more detailed, right? I go, well, get your neighbor over here to get his stuff out of here because this lady doesn't want to have an ice skating rink in her backyard. Oh, well, I thought they'd work it out. I thought they would talk to each other. He could maybe leave it there after I closed. I'm like, no. I'm like, that's not how this works, right? I'm like, I told you free and clear of all debris. And he goes, yeah, my stuff. That's his stuff. I'm like, no. I'm like,
That's his stuff on
your
his
property, right?
And now you just told her that's her lawnmower.
I know, and she was cool about it, right? So the neighbor came over, right? And I'm like, this is either gonna go really good or really bad. And it went really good. And she allowed the stuff to remain and in that area, as long, because she had 2 little boys and she was actually excited that the neighbor puts up an ice skating rink, right? It went really good. And he agreed to snowplow her walkway if he can leave the walkway. And I hear him negotiating, like leaving stuff with the neighbor. I'm like, it's between you two. I'm out of here. Right? Like this is, of course, I'm just saying that to you all here, but in person, it's like nice as pie and friendly, right? So here we go. But so yeah, get those forms signed. All right, now we did all those yesterday, the lead form, right? You're good, right? You did this just. Oh, that one, yeah, this one. Chris, sit down. There's just one more form.
Don't leave.
This is a very important form. You people at home and in the PDF may not have this form because I don't think it was part of the package. So I'll just hold it up. It should now be available in our DocuSign thing. Can you guys read? Shelley, I see you looking. Can you see it clear enough? You can, good. Yep, great. So it's a 2-part form. It's an offer presentation instructions, and then it's also the offer notification instructions, right? See that? So it's a 2-part form. The top part says, we, the owners of the property located at the address. And you're gonna check off 1. Any and all offers of the property to be presented to us exclusively by an authorized representative of Keller Williams Realty. Offer 2 says presentation of offers by non-Keller Williams Realty agents representing the buyer. So some of you may not know this, but in the MLS gives buyer agents the right for a personal presentation with your seller to present offers face-to-face, okay? Now, as we're in such a highly competitive marketplace nowadays, don't be surprised if buyers agents are looking for some edge to get in, to make sure their offers are being presented and they might start invoking that right by MLS. Hey, Frank, I want to present personally to your client. And I'm going to tell you that 90% of the agents out there don't even know that this right exists in the MLS. And so that buyer agent might get like, what are you talking about? You're not going to present it in person, blah, blah, blah. Well, if you ask some of the older agents in our business, they used to do this more commonly. They would go to the seller's house directly. The listing agent would be there and they would present the offer to the seller personally, and then they leave, right? And you're not allowed to negotiate in front of them. You're allowed to just present it, explain the offer, the benefits of your buyer, and present it in person. Unless you have written authorization from the seller that says, we don't want that. We only want the offers to come through our listing agent. So buyers agents have the right to do that. Okay. So that's what this top half is doing. It's basically blocking that potential from happening.
So they have to give it to you, not them.
Right. Right. Now,
That's option 1.
option 1. But you're explaining this to the seller. You have 2 choices here, and I recommend you choose number 1. because we want all offers to come through me directly so that I can properly present them to you without any pressure from the other agent in the room. They're trying to read your reaction. They're trying to understand how you feel and maybe try to get some insight to you to give their buyer a different take on it. Now, I've never had any seller object to my advice of checking off one, right? But certainly you might find a seller that says, I don't mind if they want to present in person, let them, that's fine, right? They might check off two. But either way, you're upfront having the dialogue versus, hey, ring, Shelley, listen, I know I didn't talk to you about this, but I have a buyer agent who wants to directly present the offer to you. Ron, what does that mean? And I was, we're all nervous now. I got 5 other offers over here. Just upfront, deal with it. Let them know about it, right?
Ron, where did you say we could find this form?
This form will be inside .loop. So I'm going to bring Kate in here in a minute to go over where to find these forms, right?
We have DocuSign in Andover.
I'm sorry, DocuSign.
Okay.
Right. I am old timey. I'm not that old, by the way, just so you know. But I am old in the business. And I definitely use I've been using .loop, so I kind of never switched over. So I'm paying more every month to use .loop because I'm too lazy to learn DocuSign right now. Bad, Ron. But 2022, y'all, I'm gonna learn DocuSign. All right. The second part of this form, offer notification instructions. We the owners, located at the home, authorize KW Realty to disclose to potential buyers the following. Check all that apply: existence of offers, existence of multiple offers, existence of any offer by the listing agent or another licensee of KW, the price of any offer, and the terms of each offer and counteroffer, right? So you're getting upfront permission from your seller that as you see fit or deem necessary to disclose to buyer agents and their clients where you are with offers, okay? You still have a duty to be honest and ethical. You're not going to lie about what you're disclosing. You can't do that, right? That'd be fraud, right? But you certainly can now say, we have all over asking price offers. Now, you've definitely gotten that from listing agents before. They have definitely told you that before, right? Now, are they getting permission from the seller to do that? I don't know, right? But I do know that the standard listing contract does not allow for them to do that, right? So same here, right? We're making sure that our agents are upfront with our clients, getting written permission to say what they need to say or cover their ass in the event that, a disgruntled buyer agent comes back and said, you shopped my offer around. Did you not? I know that the contract doesn't give you permission to do that. I caught wind that you told another agent about X, Y, and Z. And my client is pissed off and they're going to sue your brokerage firm for disclosing blah, 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 blah. And then you're going to say, well, I've got written authorization from the seller to disclose offer details as described right here and as allowed for in our standard listing agreement that we all use. Okay. So again, we want to protect you and the brokerage firm. All right.
So you can disclose the price?
Absolutely.
If they give you permission.
If I get permission.
What do you
What's my job? I'm the listing agent. What's my job?
That's-
To be nice and fair with the buyer agent and the buyers? No, my job is this person.
Cherry
hired.
wine.
Right. My job is to get the most amount of money.
What is 3? Oh, how does 3 differ from 1 and 2?
3. 3 is, how does 3 differ than, 1 is the existence of offers. Hey, we have multiple offers, right? Which you get permission for that in the listing agreement. 2, the existence of multiple offers. We have many offers, right? Any offer is one
Oh,
offer.
1 and 2.
One offer, many offers, existence of any offer by me. The offers came through me. They came through Chris at Keller Williams, right? The price, yeah, we have over asking price. The current bid is up 50,000 over asking price. Yeah,
What would you recommend? Because I'm thinking 1, 2, and 3. I wouldn't do 4 and 5.
when you say I wouldn't do, you mean if you were a seller?
I wouldn't, well,
No,
you
you,
recommend and explain to the seller.
here's what I recommend.
Okay.
You get everything signed. And then you as the agent in your expertise determine when and if you're going to use this authority. Again, getting the permission doesn't mean you're going to do it. It means that you have the permission to do it if you need to. That's all. That's all.
So you'd recommend getting everything,
Just get everything signed.
get permission for everything.
And then you decide how you need it. Like, here's a good example. You have 2 offers. One is full price with, 5% down, right? One is, 20,000 under asking price, all cash, waive inspections, close in 30 days, right? Do you want to be able to say, can you go higher? We have other offers, or give me your highest and best. Or do you want to be say, listen, my client wants to work with your client, he likes your terms. However, we've got 20,000 more from somebody else. You're going to have to do better, Frank, right? To bridge that gap. Can you do a higher number? Well, will your client accept our offer if they do that? Well, I don't know. I would have to take that could you write a new offer up and bring it up? And I've been authorized to tell you that I have full price. However, we like your terms better. Okay. Well, my client wants to stick then. My client will want to stand. If you like my terms better, you'll take less money. Okay. Is that your final offer? Because I have 20,000 more, which, you have good terms, but $20,000 is a lot of money, Frank. This is just one potential scenario. I'm not saying you should do exactly what I just did. I'm just giving you an example.
But having all 5 checked, having permission to do all 5 gives you more flexibility.
Right. I want flexibility.
Okay.
Right. All right. Good. Good form. My favorite form. All right. Well,
Does this get put up on the MLS?
No.
Right?
nope. Your listing contracts, any type of legal documentation does not get put up on the MLS. Disclosures, inclusions, exclusions, those get put up on the MLS. All right. Okay. I think, that's the lead form. Chris, just stay real quick,
Yeah, I'm
right?
gonna say.
The lead form from the seller's side is what we're going to talk about now. Yesterday, we talked about it from the buyer's side, right? So here we are on the seller's side. This is the property transfer notification certification. The form is to be signed by the prospective purchaser before signing a purchase and sales agreement or memorandum of agreement, right? Or by the leasee prospective purchaser before signing a lease with an option to purchase for the residential property built before 78 for compliance with federal and mass lead-based paint disclosures. So this is a form that the seller must sign and must give to a potential buyer before they have an accepted offer or a purchase contract memorandum, those kind of things on a property. So you need your seller to fill this out before you are actually going on the market, all right? I get it, you get it done right at the first meeting, right at the hiring moment, right? Yesterday, we read the entire warning statement. I'm not going to read that today, but just summarize it. It explains to the client that lead paint is bad. Homes built before 78 have a high amount of potential lead paint in them, and that there are some legal duties of a buyer in Massachusetts if they buy a home. And there's the legal duties of a seller in Massachusetts and the country to disclose their knowledge or lack of knowledge of said lead paint. So the top section, seller's disclosure, A. So Mr. Seller, let me ask you, this form is going to help you disclose your knowledge or lack of knowledge of lead paint, right? You need to check 1 or 2 below. Either known lead-based paint and or lead-based paint hazards are present in the home. And then there's a line to explain a little bit. Or 2, the seller has no knowledge of lead-based paint and or lead paint hazards in the home. Mr. Seller, which one do you feel more comfortable checking? Which one is more accurate? Which one would you check? Ron, I don't know anything about lead paint in the home. Okay, so you would check 1. Well, Ron, oh wait, I apologize. 2, I don't know anything about the home. I don't know anything about lead paint in the home, Ron. Okay, check off 2, right? Well, Ron, when we bought the home, we had a lead test done, and there's some lead up on the banisters, and there's some this and that, and yada, yada. Okay, great. So you know about lead paint in the home. Correct. Check 1. And you might want to just describe a little bit about that, right? By the way, do you have any records and reports available? What do you mean, Ron? Well, you just told me you had some testing done, you determined this, that, and the other thing. Are those reports available? Do you have them? Could we share them with the buyer? Do you have them? Yeah, I do actually have them, right? Great, can you give them to me now? Sure. So he'll check off records and reports available to seller. Check 1 or 2 below. He'll check I off, right? Seller has provided the purchaser, or well, me at that moment, with all available records and reports pertaining to the lead-based paint, blah, 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 blah. Whatever he has, he'll check off. I have a lead inspection report, I'll check that off. A risk assessment report, a letter of interim control, or a letter of compliance, okay? So a lot of hiccups happen with Well, I had the whole house de-leaded. It's in compliance, so there's no lead paint here. So what should he check? 1 or 2 on A?
2.
Anyone else want to give a go? You would think 1,
Oh, no, she's 1.
because he knew. You think 1? He knows, right? So the question was, if a seller had the home de-leaded and there's no more lead in the home, right? That, he's got a letter of compliance, there's no lead in the home, things like that. Should he check off 1 or 2? Confusing, right? So presence of lead-based paint and or lead paint hazards. Known lead paint or lead hazards are present in the housing. Explain. 2, seller has no knowledge of lead-based paint and or lead paint hazards in the housing. Which one is more accurate? Don't you hate those questions? Check off which one is more accurate. And like when you take those personality tests or whatever, which one describes you more, Marshall? Right? But neither really describe you. But which one describes you more? Right? So which one describes more? I'd say, well, Mr. Seller, which one describes it more here? You know about lead paint and you had it removed. You got a letter of compliance. So you have some knowledge that there was lead paint here. You had tests done. You had people in here de-leading. So there are known. Did they get every little morsel of it? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. Could you confidently say you have no knowledge of lead-based paint or hazards in the home? Sounds like you were all up and down on lead paint here, What fits better? And that's in the example of they brought it into compliance. Because some will argue there's no lead in the house. I had it all taken care of, so I don't know anything.
That's
No
not
knowledge.
compliance. That's not compliance. Compliance is the whole thing, the bite of the surfaces.
Oh, yeah,
4
yeah,
feet.
yeah. You know what I mean, though, in the statement. He got it, he brought it into letter of compliance, right? He's got it in compliance, right? So now, right, compliance doesn't mean there's no lead paint in the home.
Right, that's my point.
Frank, love him. So letter of compliance, now we go deep down the rabbit hole a little bit. A letter of compliance means the home is in compliance with safety, even though there's still lead paint in the home. That's not fully de-leaded.
Right.
In our example, the home was fully de-leaded, right? So he said, I got the home fully de-leaded, there's no lead in the home. I just say, I'm a very conservative person, right? I would default to what covers my seller's ass the best, right? And I would say it should be 1, I know about lead paint. Prior lead test disclosed that we had lead paint, brought the home into lead, had the home de-leaded by licensed de-leader back in 2013, see reports attached. This covers my client's ass the most, right? And my ass the most, because now we're having a discussion about lead paint. And I, as a broker, have to disclose everything I know, right? So I would default to the most conservative protectionary for the seller. So I would check 1, he would check 1, you never sign this, you never check on their behalf, they check it, right? And then B, records and reports available. So they might say, we had it de-leaded, but I lost all my reports. So they're gonna say no reports available, right? That sucks. You better get some reports. If you're claiming that the home has been de-leaded or is it in compliance, you better get some reports, okay, to back that up. And then, so B, then they would check off which reports they have, or 2 would be no reports. So back to reality, 95% of the time, I could say, I could probably count on one hand in 17 years, how many clients have checked, sellers have checked off, we know about lead paint, and here are the reports that we have. It very rarely happens. Most people are numb to lead paint. They don't care. They know it's dangerous, but my kid's not gonna bite anything, we never had it inspected. It was never told to us there was lead paint here. I don't know, Ron. I've lived here for 13 years and nothing ever bad's happened. I don't know. Never had an investment. So they're just checking unknown and no reports. That happens 95% of the time. Okay. Yes, Frank.
I'm a realtor.
You are a
Selling
realtor.
my house.
You're selling your house.
My house was built in the 50s. Well,
Wow.
my house was built in the 50s.
Okay.
I know all about the 1978 deadline and I know all that history.
Yes.
I've never had it tested.
Never had it tested.
Can I reasonably say, 1, no lead paint, no lead paint and or lead paint based hazards are present in the home?
Can
I
you
don't
say
know-
that?
I don't know that there's lead paint. If I had to bet,
but you don't know.
I don't know.
You don't know either way.
And has that, okay,
Is that, I understand where you're going with
you
that.
know, I mean,
You might want to say, it's realistic to assume that there's lead paint here. So I'm going to write down, you as the seller is going to say, I'm going to say known lead paint hazards. And you might explain, due to the home being built before 78, actually 1950, and I've lived here for so long, I'm pretty sure I probably painted the rooms with lead paint in the 60s
no,
and
I
70s.
didn't paint anything, but I always use latex because it's easier to clean up.
Okay, but you lived there since the 50s, right? And all the paint then was oil-based. I don't think the latex came around until much newer. So if you've painted your rooms more than once since the 50s, you're probably painted with lead paint. Probably. But you never tested for it. But I'm following your lead on this. You're saying you're with a seller. Hey, Ron, I've painted this house 20 times throughout. I've never tested for lead paint, but I know that when I tested it, all that was available, when I painted it, all that was available was lead paint.
I bought the house in '85, but yeah, so.
No, your example, you lived there since the 50s.
Right.
Okay. Well,
house
I've
is
made your
built-
example. You follow my example now.
Okay.
You're selling someone's home they lived in since the 50s, right? And they've been painting the home many, many times, right? It's reasonable to assume there's lead paint in that house. If they themselves are saying, I've painted this house, when did you paint it? I painted it in the 50s and the 60s and the 70s and the 80s. Okay, what kind of paint did you use? I'm pretty sure it probably had lead in it. Okay, so what would you feel comfortable saying, Mr. Seller? You have knowledge that there's lead paint in this home. Do you have knowledge there's lead paint? Well, I never tested for it. Okay, that's fair. You've never tested for it. What do you feel most comfortable disclosing? Right? Well, I think, Ron, to be careful, I'd like to disclose that I painted this home multiple times and I'm pretty sure I used lead paint to paint it. Disclose it. Never stop a guy from or gal from disclosing what they feel comfortable disclosing. Never feed them. Never tell them what to disclose or how to disclose. I know it's, they're going to ask for your advice on that. Just say, listen, I want you to be as safe as possible. Let me worry about selling the home. I can sell any home. You can sell any home, whether it says known lead or no known lead. Have your client feel comfortable, right? Ron, I want to be safe here. I do know that I painted this home over the decades. There should be probably some lead paint. I've never tested for it. Great, write that down. Painted the home, never tested, not sure 100%, just want to be careful.
But in my case, I've only painted with latex paint. I've never tested it. So
Right.
there's one room that I haven't painted that.
Okay, so back to you. So Frank, how would you like to disclose here?
I
You wanna
don't know-
disclose you have
I
no
no knowledge.
Great, Frank, check 2. It's their disclosure. It's the seller's disclosure.
You're saying.
It's not the agent's disclosure. It's the seller's
So you're
disclosure.
saying check 2 and then I have no records.
I'm not saying that. You're saying that. You told me that you have no knowledge and you have no records. So if that's what you're telling me, Frank, you check A2 and B2,
Oh, okay,
right?
right.
And you'll sign your name to that, right, Frank?
Yes,
Perfect.
that's my real.
I don't tell you how to fill this out, Frank. I'll read it with you and explain what each line might
I
mean, and then you decide.
I
Now-
think that there's a database through the state.
There is a
If
database
you
to the
hire
state.
somebody to de-lead your home.
Or take a
they
test on it.
Report it.
Any lead testing or de-leading and all that kind of stuff is
Yes.
recorded at the state level,
Yes, it
Right.
is. We had ours done.
right?
And another home we owned, there was documentation that it had been de-leaded.
Okay,
And then we had our rental property de-leaded. I think that automatically gets reported. to the
all lead
state.
stuff,
Yeah,
if
so
it's done by
good.
licensed lead people, get
Yes.
recorded too,
Exactly. It's
the
good.
state. Well, it's real good, and so
Access those
now,
records.
what Chris is kind of bordering on is should you as a Realtor go researching this database, right? Do you have an affirmative duty to research property condition in Massachusetts? Yes or no? No. Yes or no? It's a simple question. Does Frank's license require him an affirmative duty
I've heard.
to research
I've been
property
told
condition?
We're supposed to go see if there were permits pulled in the property, any outstanding permits.
Who told you that?
I don't want to mention names, but it was in this
I
office.
heard the same
Yeah,
thing.
your license does not require you to pull permits.
No.
I mean,
check-
to check on
check on
permits and
permits.
things, no.
So to see if they put an addition on and they got a permit to do that, we don't have to do that and go there.
No, you should never do that. I've told you 1,000 times. What you should do, hey, it's my, since I'm in the business and I know a lot about this stuff, Frank, I recommend that you, Mr. Buyer, and I go down to the town hall and pull the records on this property. They've done a lot of work here. You might want to check to see if the permits have been pulled to your satisfaction. Because what happens if you go down there, Frank, and you pull the jacket out and you miss something, or you say something that isn't true, right? Or the buyer now relies upon your statement that you checked the permits and that they were all up to snuff, according to Frank Ford,
Right.
who is not a contractor, who is not anything but a real estate professional.
Right.
It's not your responsibility,
Okay.
and you should never do that. And anyone who tells you to do that, they're telling you to go beyond the scope of your license. Now, you can help them find the information. You can walk them down to the town hall. You might be with them while they're talking to the building inspector. You might chime in with some questions of your own to kind of add some insight that you might know. But you're not deciding for them if the permits are all properly pulled. You're not, again, you could miss something.
Exactly.
Don't do it.
And same thing with zoning.
Same thing with, absolutely, it says it right on the offer form, that the buyer is not relying upon any statements by the broker or the representatives regarding the lawful usefulness of this property or zoning as it pertains to multifamily, commercial, single-family status.
We have an example in here where one of the people doing the presentation talked about the fact that the card or something said it was multifamily.
Yeah,
And then when they went down and looked at the actual permit of the house, it wasn't set up for old business. There was something, one document said, yeah, you could have a business, run a business out of there. And then when they scratched the surface, there wasn't. And it was like, it was our responsibility to verify that before we put the house in listing.
okay, so, all right, so now you're talking on the listing side, right? Where you're listing the property, and we're now marketing the property to the world.
Right.
And we want to market it as accurately as possible.
Right.
That's different than taking a buyer, telling a buyer what they can do or not do in a home, right?
Okay.
Right. So, I mean, again, we live in a gray space, right? If you're a good listing agent, you are definitely pulling up the public record on the property, right? There should be a reasonable expectation that you can trust the public record information if you're getting it from the municipality, i.e. the field card. You actually have the real field card. And the field card says, single family, from the municipality. That's directly from the municipality. If that is wrong, you have done, a reasonable amount of work,
Yeah.
right? If the seller is telling you it's a single family, right? And so what do we do? When you put the stuff in the MLS, you're sending a copy of the MLS to the client for them to give you the approval back that is accurate to the best of their knowledge, right? So that's two steps, right? One, you check with the town, the field card, to pull off information from the municipality, not the public record section of MLS. When you go into that thing, that is a third-party service, trying to pull data from another service.
Right.
I'm talking about you going right to the town's website
So you go to the town.
and you're getting the actual field card, right? I'm not talking about Patriot Properties, and that's another third-party company that might be working with
I
the town.
agree.
right? It's going right to the town's website, clicking on whatever link they have to access the town's information, and then pulling it where it's official, right? I mean, if you're a good listing agent, you might actually want to go to the town hall and actually pull the field card. Yes, we're in a gray area space, but if that field card says single family, I think you're pretty safe to market it as single family, right? What you're really talking about is the whole usage thing. So the thing is zoned as commercial. Oh, no, it's zoned as single family, right? And, but if you study zoning at all, there's multiple single family zones within towns. Some single family zones allow for certain types of businesses to run in them.
Some are grandfathered.
Some are grandfathered, some it's complicated. Some don't. So if you have a client that says, Frank, you're helping me buy a single family home that I can run a daycare out of, right? You say, hey, that's great. I'm not going to be able to guarantee that you can run a daycare out of any home. This is exactly what you say. Only the municipality can guarantee that. So when we come in contact with a home that you want to buy, if that is of importance to you, you should check with the municipality. Well, you're my realtor. Shouldn't you let me know that? Yeah, I am your realtor, and I'm going to negotiate a great deal for you with the seller and get you from contract to close. But I'm also going to help you go down to town hall. Can you get down there at 10 o'clock tomorrow? I'll be there. No, I'm working. Great.
Your lawyer do it.
Have your lawyer do it. I never thought of that one. Okay, great. I'll make a call and get you the right person to contact at the town hall. You can make a phone call to them on your lunch break, can't you? Yes. Here's the phone number. Or, listen, we're dealing with adults here, okay? Adults have a duty to look out for their own best interests as well. And you have done nothing wrong or poor service by reminding them of caveat emptor, and you need to do a little legwork here too, Mr. Seller. My license doesn't allow me to tell you you can put 4 bedrooms here on a 3-bedroom septic, or, these kind of mishigasses. My job is to help you find a property that makes sense, right? Negotiate a great deal, get you from contract to close. If something is of importance to you, the high level like that, we'll help you get the right resources to kind of find the answer. We'll help you, but we're not gonna vouch for the answer. We're not gonna do it ourselves and say, this is true. We should not be doing that. You're not doing that, I know you're not. But it's a good question. Because some agents think that
Well,
they're
'cause
doing
like
a
I
good
said,
level
I've
of
gotten-
service.
I've gotten conflicting
Yeah.
advice from people that, gone through these lectures.
Think back to your real estate licensing law.
Well, yeah.
All right, everyone should just default to their real estate class, their license. You got a license. Open up the book. Look for the section where it says, you're supposed to go to town hall and pull all the permits for your client and make sure, was it in there? No. None of your license is for that.
No, I agree.
Okay.
I just wanted to hit you, I just wanted to get your version.
My thoughts on it.
of that.
I'm a big proponent of good customer service, helping them find the right information. I'm not a proponent of you actually getting the answer for them and saying, you're all set, Frank. Stop the daycare. Don't do that.
Don't do that.
Okay. So finishing up this lead form real quick, agent acknowledgement. Well, since this is the listing side day, at section G, you're going to initial, agent has informed the seller of the seller's obligation under federal and state law for lead-based paint disclosure and notification, and is aware of his or her responsibility to ensure compliance, right? And the seller's compliance responsibility is simply disclosing what they know, okay? Which is this form. There is no more duty of the seller than this form, okay? That could change someday. I know that there's chippity chap on Capitol Hill or whatever about requiring sellers to proactively investigate lead paint or proactively bring a home into lead compliance before selling, similar to a Title V. You know how you can't sell a home unless the septic works, right? Or you have to have it tested, right? There is talk, it's been going on for years, about making sellers responsible for doing a similar thing with lead paint before selling. So that could change from time to time. Now, I think anyone who was with me yesterday is, free and clear to go, I think. Because now I'm going to go over the forms that I went over yesterday with the people who weren't there yesterday, if they want to stay with me. And it's going to be quick, lickety split. Okay? So I'm going to continue. Here we go. The first one is the agency form, right? Agency form, right? The Board of Registration of Real Estate Brokers and Salespersons, Mass Mandatory Licensing Consumer Relationship Disclosure. This is not a contract, right? The time when this licensee must be provided this notice to the consumer. The time when this licensee must provide this notice to the consumer. All licensees must present the form to you at the first personal meeting to discuss a specific residential property. This form has changed. If there is no personal meeting between you and the licensee, this form must be presented electronically or through some other means before the licensee enters into a contract with the consumer. So the contract we're speaking of today is the listing agreement, okay? Residential property is defined as land with a building intended for use as a 1 to 4 unit residential dwelling, or the purchase or sale of land on which a building is intended to be constructed for use as a 1 or 2 unit residential dwelling. In the event this relationship changes, an additional disclosure must be provided and completed at that time. Questions on this? Questions on this? I think, obviously, the couple changes you're seeing here are, it's actually focused on residential property now. So I don't know what that means for the commercial people in this room right now, but maybe they have a different disclosure form. I don't know. But this is about residential property now, this disclosure, okay? It also says that it must be presented to the consumer electronically before the signing of a contract. So that might be in the case like yesterday, we talked about someone who's out of state, right? And you're gonna help them sell their home, right? You can't just send the listing contract over. Now you must send this form over as well prior to the listing contract, okay? And we talked that perhaps some people, some agents may have thought, well, I've never met the client personally, so I don't need to fill out the agency disclosure form. Which this now clearly states that's not the case. Even if you don't see them,
So they took out the face-to-face meeting.
it must be
That
done.
was always a problem I had with it.
Right. They kept in the first personal meeting, right? But they've also said, hey, even if you never meet personally, this form must be presented before contract is signed. And when they say contract, contract can mean anything. Can mean listing agreement contract, can mean offer to purchase contract, could mean,
So the face-to-face thing is still there.
face-to-face thing is still there, but clearly if you're meeting someone electronically, because people can buy homes sight unseen. People can hire you to sell their home sight unseen, right? People can hire you to be their buyer agent sight unseen, right? But this Massachusetts now wants you to know that they still have to sign this form electronically, at least before they get into a contract.
What I heard was, and it's the best answer I've got. I
Nice.
got the example that marketing and, someone, actually you're not marketing, you're just out at a party or a bar or something.
Yeah.
Someone mentions real estate and you says, hey, I can sell your house, but I don't carry these forms around with me in my pocket.
Right.
That's the first face-to-face meeting when I marketed that person.
To discuss a specific property. They want to talk about 125 Main
Right.
Street. Yep.
And what I was told was, and I haven't seen this in writing, I'm covered because there was no presumption of doing business. That somehow that alleviates me from, it was the first face-to-face meeting, but I didn't have the form. Well, when I started talking to that person, there was no presumption of doing business. I was told that by one of the people from G, I forget which one it was.
Okay.
It might have been a meeting. And,
Interesting.
but I was hoping, and that's a phrase, I don't know. And I talked to Jamie about it and she says, yeah, that's true, but I haven't seen that in writing.
Exactly.
you know.
Yeah, I mean, again, I just take it for what it is. And it says, hey, if I'm going to talk real estate with somebody, the state wants me to disclose to that person who I am at that moment.
Right.
Am I the listing agent? You're at a cocktail party. Can I help them as a buyer agent or am I here as a facilitator?
I mean, I would tell them.
Right.
But I can't present the form to them. I said, well, just let you know, if you start talking to me, blah, 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 but I don't have the form to
Right.
present.
Right. So he's talking about you're at a cocktail party and you have a new listing at 125 Main Street. You're the listing agent, for example, Marshall, right? And Judy comes up to you. Oh my God, Marshall, you listed 125 Main Street. That's so, I've always loved that home. In fact, me and my husband are looking to buy. Could we come see it sometime? Absolutely. Love to show it to you. Yeah, you are the seller's agent, but you're at a cocktail party. So Frank's talking about, you don't have the form. She wants to start talking to you all about this house. She's starting to expunge upon you her motives, terms and values. What do? The law says you need to stop her and disclose to her, hey, I'm the seller's agent. I have a fiduciary duty to that seller. Please, that's what you're supposed to do, right? In practice, what you should do is to say, hey, Judy, sounds like we have a lot to talk about. We're enjoying a great party right now. Why don't we set up an appointment tomorrow to get together? Because there is some paperwork I got to go over with you before we can actually really get heavy into discussing this thing. Does that sound fair? And she'll say, yeah, of course. Tomorrow at noon work? Yeah, great. And then you move on, right? I know what you're saying. There's no presumption of doing business, but in that example, there might be. She's looking to buy a home.
I'm just telling you, because I've been asking this question from the beginning.
I know. Doesn't happen that much.
Broadcast on the Zoom call once.
Right, exactly. All right, so let's continue real quick here. Consumer information and responsibility. If you are a buyer or seller, you can engage a licensee to provide advice, assistance, and representation to you as your agent. The licensee can represent you as a seller's agent or a buyer agent, or can assist as a facilitator. All licensees, regardless of working relationships with a consumer, must by law present properties honestly and accurately and disclose known material defects in the real estate. The duties of a real estate licensee do not relieve the consumer of the responsibility to protect their own interests. Caveat emptor, I just told you that, right? If you need advice for legal, tax, insurance, or land survey matters, it's your responsibility to consult a professional in those areas. Real estate licensees do not and cannot perform home, lead paint, or insect inspections, nor do they perform septic, wetlands, or environmental evaluations. Do not assume that a real estate licensee works solely for you unless you have an agreement for that relationship. Okay? The seller or buyer receiving the disclosure hereby advised that the real estate licensee named below is working as a, and since this is a listing side day, we'll be checking off, you're getting hired, yes, go to work, we want you to be our agent, listing agent, seller agent, you're checking off. Now, yesterday's class, we talked about when does this form have to be disclosed or given out? And the absolute truth is, the minute you walk in the door, that you're beginning your first personal meeting with the listing client, you are supposed to pull this form out immediately and inform them, hey, before we start talking about a lot of different things here today, I'm excited to be here, and hopefully at the end of this conversation, you'll be putting me to work as your seller's agent and we're getting this home sold. Massachusetts requires that I disclose to you who I am at this very moment in our meeting. It's just a disclosure form. You can see right here, it's not a contract, and I need to discuss agency with you, okay? If you choose to hire me tonight, I'll become your seller's agent, and I'll owe you the fiduciary duties of obedience, loyalty, disclosure, confidentiality, accounting, and reasonable care. If I was here representing a buyer, and maybe you were trying to sell on your own, and I'm here to see the home, I'm here as a buyer agent, I'd be disclosing that I'm here as a buyer's agent, and that I work for them and owe them that fiduciary. But right now, at this moment, since we really haven't gotten into a hiring mode yet, I'm kind of here as a facilitator. I'm here right now at this moment as a facilitator. We're gonna have a conversation. We're gonna talk about the market. We'll talk about your property. We'll go over valuations. And hopefully you'll choose to hire me at the end of tonight's presentation, at which point we can change to seller agent. But right now, you're not hiring me yet. Hopefully you will. If I don't get hired, there'll be no assumption that I was here as a seller's agent going forward, okay? So you go in as a facilitator right at the beginning, okay? You will check off at the beginning of the night, facilitator, and then have them sign the form. Now, at the end of the night, when you're getting hired, you'll switch to seller's agent. And you should, because you can go from facilitator to seller agent. But you can't go from seller to facilitator. You can't go up and then down, but you can go down and then up. So should you pull out a brand new form? The answer is you probably should pull out a brand new form and do it again as seller agent, okay? But most of the time, a lot of people just scratch out facilitator, get everyone to initiate it, check off seller's agent, right? And then we'll continue the rest of this form. So if seller or buyer agent is checked off, the licensees must complete the following section. In our office, you're always going to check off designated agency. On the right side, check off designated agency. Only the licensee named herein represents the seller, because you're here now getting hired by the seller. Check off seller. In this situation, any other agents affiliated with the firm or business listed below do not represent you and may represent another party in your real estate transaction. By signing below, I, the real estate licensee, acknowledge that the disclosure has been provided to the consumer named herein. And I'll sign it. I'll print my name. I'll put my license number. I'm checking off salesperson and today's date. I'll then put Keller Williams Realty Success, broker firm license number 7874. And then the consumer will sign and they'll print their name and they'll check off seller because they're going to be a seller. I've never had anyone decline to sign this notice in this situation, but if for some strange reason someone did, you would check that off and you might initial, and then you'll email them a copy of the form to make sure you have a record that you at least gave them the form. Okay. On the back, it talks about the types of agency relationships, which I'm not really going to go into too much today with that. Seller agent is, again, we're describing the fiduciary duties to the seller. Buyer agent describes the fiduciary duties to the buyer. Facilitator describes what a facilitation arrangement is like and what duties are owed to the customers in that situation. Designated sellers and buyers agents, we've gone over that already in the listing contract, and it just discusses that I and only I within this office is the actual appointed agent to represent them. And the dual agent possibility is that, if at any point buyer client of mine wants to buy my listing, that I will be in dual agency. Okay, so that's the agency form. Any questions on that? No. Okay. Wire fraud, Frank.
Oh, I thought you were done.
Yep.
So keep
Nope. Wire fraud advisory form. This is a requirement now. I'm not going to read it, but I'm going to remind you that we need to present this form when getting hired by a seller or a buyer. And this form informs the client that the risks are real in real estate for wire fraud. Our industry, more than any other, really, is ripe for hackers and criminals targeting email accounts, and everything's public, right? My listing's public, my contact information is public, the seller's contact information is public record. Quick Google search, they can certainly find out the seller's email addresses. They know when the homes go under agreement. They know the average days on market before a closing, so they know the right time to strike and send a phony email to a seller asking for personal information, things like that. I'm sure they're tracking buyer agents, and buyer agents are now proudly boasting, offer accepted, right? So buyers are out there, buyer agents are out there saying, so proud happy for my buyer, offer accepted, on to closing. So now that scam artist knows that Frank Ford buyer agent got a deal on this house at 125 Main Street done, right? So now he knows he's going to try to find out who that buyer is, and maybe he's going to somehow find out. I don't know, but I think it's harder to find out who the buyer is than it is the seller. The seller's all public, okay? It just reminds them never to wire funds, verify that contact information is legitimate, never send personal information like social security numbers and bank account numbers over the internet, and take steps to secure their email accounts, et cetera, et cetera. So it's just reminding them of the risk here, right? Get them to sign it. All right. The next form is my favorite. It's the consent to electronic delivery of purchase and sales documents. This is the form you get them to sign and indicate which email addresses they would like to use our DocuSign.loop systems, okay? Yes, we all know that electronic signatures are now legal. Emails can be binding, things like that. But it's always good, and we want to get written wet signature approval to do it, okay? It becomes very important when there's a dispute on, I never went in and signed that. My ex-husband must have hacked my email account and signed on my behalf. I didn't authorize that. I didn't authorize electronic signatures. Okay, that's why you need this sign, so that you have proof that they authorized it, okay? You want a wet signature. Page 2 of this, just check off all documents. All documents, number 1. You don't want to be getting into like which documents can be signed electronically and which ones have to be hand signed, okay? So you get them to sign it. Actually handwrite the email address they want you to use. And remember, husband and wives need, if there are multiple owners, each owner needs their own email account. You can't have one email account for multiple owners signing the same document. They all have to have their own account, okay? Got it. What else? Wire fraud, we did that. We did that off the presentation. We did that. We did lead paint. I think we're done. With that, yeah, we're done. Okay, so I went over by 42 minutes. You guys are champs for hanging. Any questions, call me. I like to talk on the phone. Don't text me. Intricate real estate question, call me. Okay, that's the best. It's best done verbal to verbal. Everyone at home, if you want to know where to access all these documents, they're on DocuSign. It's so late, I don't know where Kate is, but ask Kate. She'd be happy to tell you how to access these forms in DocuSign. I guarantee you they're in our form section. So, any other questions? Otherwise, I'm out.
Once you get
Hi,
this
Frank.
contract signed,
Yes,
what do you have to put into MLS and when? Because you said you can wait,
right,
4 to 6 weeks.
right.
But
So
you have
there-
to put something in there within 24 hours, correct?
Correct. So and that's a good question. We don't have that form with us today. There's a non-MLS form or delay of a showings form, right? So if you're getting a listing and it's not going in the MLS within 24 hours, you need the seller to sign a delay of showings form or delay of entry form,
Okay.
or a non-MLS form. I just get the non-MLS form signed because it gives me maximum flexibility, okay? The non-MLS form allows you to do things that the delay form does not allow you to do, okay? So you want the non-MLS form, because that effectively means you can start selling the property immediately if so inclined, without putting it in the MLS right away, okay? Not that you would, because you want to put your stuff in the MLS.
Right, but if somebody stumbles across, if you trip over somebody who wants to buy the house, it's not an MLS. yet.
Well,
What are you gonna-
you want to talk to the seller and say, listen, I got this guy, he's hot and heavy. You know, I think in this scenario, it might be in your best interest to show it based upon your unique situation.
Right.
You know, if you ask my feelings on it, it's always best to go into the MLS unless under extreme circumstances. Because that's the only way the seller will know that he reached the most amount of ready, able, and willing buyers and brokers to know about their offer. That they know that they're getting the best price, the best possible terms, et cetera, et cetera. If you don't go into the MLS system and you sell it off market, you sell it to your own database, you might still get a good offer, but your seller is gonna have to sleep at night knowing, oh, we never really properly exposed it.
Okay, I was just wondering, you know, because I know there's that requirement.
Yeah, there is a requirement. So MLS needs you to notify them within 24 hours of taking a listing if it's not going in the MLS. And in today's world, it's impossible to put it in the MLS in 24 hours. You're not getting, and this might be why, you know, agents don't get the listing contract signed until they're ready to go in the MLS, which that actually could be the answer. Hey, I'm not ready to go in the MLS and I only have 24 hours to put it in. So I'm not going to get the listing contract signed. Wrong. You should be getting that listing contract signed, getting the seller to know, hey, my MLS requires I put it in, but it's not in your best interest. We're not putting it in. We're not really going to sign it, sell it until it's ready to be seen, because that's what's in your best interest, Mr. Seller, when it looks the best, when it's photoed the best, when it's going to excite a buyer. So sign this form that says I'm not putting it in MLS right away. And they'll sign it.
But you have to send the form, that form. in.
Yes, you have to send the form into MLS within 24 hours, so they know that you have a listing.
Okay.
Right.
That's all.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. We should have that form in this class, and we will have it at next class. Thank you, Frank. And I'll make sure that it's in the DocuSign section as well. Okay? Excellent. All right, goodbye, everybody. Call me with any questions.
Thank you.
Thanks for bringing that up. Yeah, because I didn't